Hello, everybody. Welcome to the regular business meeting for the District of Squamish for Tuesday, April 21st. Holland Squallen, Quistuktuk, Squamish Okmeo. As always, we're gathered to do our work today on the traditional unceded territory of the Squamish Nation. Please be advised this council meeting is being live streamed, recorded, and will be available to the public to view on the District of Squamish website following the meeting. If you have any concerns about this, please notify the corporate officer present at this meeting, which is Ms. Flamboudot. Could I have someone move adoption of the agenda, please? Moved by Councillor French, second by Councillor Anderson. All in favor? Motion carries. And just for those in the room, we have Councillor Stoner participating remotely today. Thank you, Councillor Stoner. Our first order of business generally would be delegations and invited presentations. We do not have any today, but we do have, so we'll move on to item 4, which is unscheduled public attendance. And before I entertain hands, I have a bit of a script to go through, and then we will engage with that. So council now invites members of the public to present matters that are either urgent or relevant to an item on the agenda and cannot wait until the next regular business meeting. And I'll just run you through what the process looks like for that, for everyone's awareness. So members of the public will be invited to address council and must state their name and provide a short sentence regarding the item they wish to discuss. If multiple people wish to address the same topic, then we would request that you nominate a spokesperson to represent that particular topic. Council will vote regarding whether the item meets the eligibility criteria. Should council determine that the topic is emergent, the speaker will be given 5 minutes to provide more information to council. Council's procedure bylaw restricts the number of speakers to 3. A total of 15 minutes on our agenda this evening is allocated for this item unless extended through a resolution of council. So we do have folks participating online today as well, but first I'll go to the room to see if anyone in the room would like to take us on this opportunity. Okay, I see 2 folks in the room, three. Thank you. We'll make sure that everyone gets an opportunity. I just want to check. I'll just do a check-in online. I'm just going to get a feeling for the volume here, and then we can find our path through this. Is there anyone that's participating online that wishes to participate in the unscheduled public attendance portion of this evening's meeting? I'm looking to our moderator for that.
Nobody currently has their hand up online.
Okay. So the process would be that, as stated, members of the public would are invited to address council. If it's on the same topic, we do try to combine. I've only seen 3 hands raised here. I don't want to assume the topic, but Russell, I'll look for a signal from you if someone online does raise their hand. But so maybe we'll go in the order I saw the hands come up, which I believe was Ms. Neal first, and then, sorry, the gentleman that is just behind the podium, and then someone over in the corner here. So we'll start there and we'll see where we go. So go ahead. You'll speak from the podium. Everyone else gets to see the pattern that we have here. So again, just your name and provide a short sentence regarding the item you wish to discuss, and then council will discuss and ultimately vote on hearing more on that item. But the floor is yours.
Okay, awesome. Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Kerry Neal. I'm the Executive Director of the Downtown Squamish BIA. I'm here representing the Joint Engagement and Advocacy Committee, which comprises the BIA, Squamish Chamber of Commerce and Tourism Squamish, representing the Squamish business community. We would like to speak about the proposed Hearth and Heart programme, the location of Waineat Park, the community engagement, the alternative locations considered, and the process going forward.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor French?
Yeah, Mayor, I'll move to hear Ms. Neal.
Thank you. Is there a seconder for that motion? Second by Councillor Hamilton. Okay, so the second part of this is you have 5 minutes to provide more information to council. This matter isn't on the agenda this evening, so this is more of a submission to council than there may not be just to set everyone's expectations, there may not be the there's not really the room for the dialogue here, although there is absolutely room broadly for dialogue on this subject going forward. So with that, the floor is yours.
Mayor, I believe we didn't vote on that.
Oh, sorry, we need to vote on that. Thank you. Thank you for that. So, Council, it's been moved and seconded that we hear more from Ms. Neal. I'll call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Now the floor is yours.
Okay.
Thank you. Very important step of the process.
Thanks. Yeah, just with the amount of discussion and uncertainty in the community right now, we feel it's really important to address this sooner rather than later, and hence why we think it's important that we get up and speak today. As I previously mentioned, we would like to address council tonight with regards to the proposed location of the Hearth and Heart programme. I want to begin by saying clearly that we support the Hearth and Heart programme and the need for housing solutions in our community. This is not a question of whether this programme has value, it does. However, we do not support the placement of within Waianayak Park. This park is central to public asset. It's a central public asset, funded, designed and presented to the community as a long-term waterfront destination for water access and a gathering place. It plays an important role not only for the downtown businesses, but also for the downtown and Sea to Sky residents, as well as the broader community who have been looking forward to this shared public space. The proposed use represents a significant and potentially long-term change to that space. The impacts would be wide-reaching, affecting economic activity, neighbourhood livability, and the character of what was intended to be one of Squamish's most prominent waterfront public assets. We are deeply disappointed and concerned by the lack of visible and meaningful public engagement on a decision of this scale. Regardless of zoning, the absence of a formal requirement, it does not remove the responsibility to engage with the community in a transparent and inclusive way. There is also a need for greater transparency around the site selection. From a community perspective, it is not clear what alternative locations were considered or how this site was determined to be appropriate. Importantly, the decision signals how key public spaces may be used in the future and how this decision how decisions of this magnitude are made. We have a call to action. For all of those reasons I just stated, we are asking the district to pause advancement of this proposal into a clear, transparent and publicly communicated engagement process has taken place. We also ask that the community is provided visibility into what alternative sites were considered and how this location has been selected. This is not simply about one project. It is about how decisions are made regarding significant public assets. Engagement in this case is not optional. It is essential to maintaining public trust. I'm going to finish there. I am open for comments, questions, but I understand that's probably not the process right now.
Thank you so much for your submission. I'll go to my council colleagues if you have any questions for our guest, or if we want to just to see if anyone's. So no, we have no questions at this point in time. I will say that it's very early in a process, and there is more engagement coming on this. It's a multi-jurisdictional response to encampments in community, and we've been long asking for help from the province, and and the province, in the form of BC Housing on the site, is the partner to advancing the work, which is really looking at feasibility at this point in time, whether we can, and then there's the whether we should. So both of those pieces are very important.
Yeah.
And in isolation, neither of those decisions really mate until we know that if it is a feasible, if any site is feasible versus then it should. And I will say that the district has very limited land holdings, and it is a really challenging discussion, but this is not something that's at the, at the very end of a process that the community's, sort of stumbled upon or a mystery in a way. This is really early in a process that will involve a substantive amount of engagement, both from like jointly with the folks involved in this, which BC Housing is a huge piece of this puzzle. So there will be some more information forthcoming, and a lot of the questions broadly are yet to be answered in the process. It's not like those answers are exist and aren't being shared at this point in time. So I do want to correct one piece of the sort of some assumptions that I heard a little bit in your remarks, and I've seen in some of the emails, is the Honiak Park piece. What's being constructed right now is a sea dike in Honiak Park. The project is never stated, and even there's a Honiak Park sea dike project page on our website that's been there for, it goes back to the inception of the project, many years in the works. It is really about the construction of the sea dike. There is a vast portion of that site is not scheduled to be, is to be futurely completed as a park. But that was not part of the scope of the project that's currently underway. It really is that sea dike and the top of that dike, the walkway. So the rest of it would be in a sort of its finished state of this project of the diking project, to be extra clear, is not dissimilar to the state before this diking project started. So it's not a situation where it was scheduled to be I don't know what, a playground, lush grassy area, picnic, all those things that we think of when we think of parks. That piece is not something that was ever contemplated as part of the diking project. Okay. Although it's a Honiak Park project, it does get conflated, but it seems to be, I don't know, that I recognize that my statements here, including that clarification, address maybe only a fraction of the concerns that we've heard from the community, but I do think it's an important distinction as we're contemplating direction on this. Okay,
understood. Yeah.
Any questions for our guests? Otherwise, we would move receipt, and we'll move on for contemplate other submissions. Is sort of the process here broadly. Go ahead.
Well, I don't have a question. I have a question for my colleagues, I guess. I'm just wondering how we as a council can be proactive in helping important voices in our community, including the residents, but also the BIA, Tourism Squamish, Under One Roof, and the Chamber being part of this conversation with BC Housing and the province. Like, how can we ensure that those voices are at the table? Should we form a committee of some sorts, that there's because these are the experts in our community about what the impact is going to be, right?
So going forward, that is exactly the intent going forward, is having this this coming together of everyone working on this. So I think that what we've seen so far is really a misstep on the launch of this initiative, which is probably a solid understatement. But going forward, there is absolutely that we are in a starting point of time where there's not the information or the venue to get all that information to and develop the information with community as of yet. But that's sort of the next steps of this program.
I guess kind of what I'm asking
Roughly.
is, how do we move it from intention to action, kind of thing? Like, how do we ensure that's going to happen? I mean, no disrespect to whatever structures, but people have a tendency to be ignored in the governance system.
So I believe that does fall to this, to this table and to this organization to ensure that happens. I don't think that there's a decision that we can make right here that advances that, but it's obviously something that even without the audience we have here today is really important to executing anything in community. So this has not met that bar yet, I don't think, by any stretch. Oh, Councillor Stoner, go ahead.
Thank you. I'd like to propose a resolution for council consideration.
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you. I'd move that we direct staff and BC Housing to bring back a presentation on the Hearth and Heart project and its delivery and community at the future committee of the whole.
Perfect.
Seconded, I'll speak to it.
Yeah, seconded by Councillor Hamilton. Thank you. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you very much. Appreciate you, Ms. Neal, coming, as well as the joint advocacy letter that was submitted, along with the number of other feedback that we got from community. Absolutely, I hear loud and clear that more engagement is necessary. I think it's also important to note that this is early in the process. So we have been asking the province for a long time to support us with the encampments that we have in community. That is done through being designated as Hearth and Hearth. We got that designation back in February. That was really exciting news. What we need now is more information with BC Housing about how that's going to show up in community. This is the first step in order to try and identify where an appropriate site would be for temporary modular housing. There aren't very many sites that are available. The intention behind Hearth and Hearth is that it's a rapid delivery of housing for a short-term period in order to bridge to something different. So folks are aware that there's a proposal for a supportive housing project at 39900 Government Road. And so there's moving pieces here. We don't have all that information tonight. We don't have all that information in community, but BC Housing and our staff have been working together. And I think what we do have is the ability to bring them back to a committee of the whole to have that discussion and kick it off on what their intention is going to be around community engagement. This is an allowable use. Supportive housing is an allowable use across all of our zones in community. That was done with intention. I don't think there's ever a welcome place often, unfortunately, to house those who are the most vulnerable in our community. But there are, as per our last point in time count, 125 individuals who need a home, not in 6 months, not in 12 months, not in 2 years, but today. Over 73% of those folks have called Squamish home for over a year. 50% of them have called Squamish home for over 5 years. These are folks who just need a place to call home. And so how we advance this conversation in community with our community partners in a way that is sensitive to the folks who are just trying to make ends meet, that we can help prop them up and give them some better supports to be able to live in community is important. But I think that for my council colleagues, that needs to start with having BC Housing staff and our staff come and do a presentation on how we're making sure that Hearth and Hearth shows up in our community in a way that we can all support. Thanks.
Thank you for that. I'll go to the seconder. Any comments, Councillor Hamilton? Then I'll go Councillor Pettingill. I'll come back around this way. That's you, Councillor Pettingill. Go ahead.
Just wondering if I can suggest a clarification in the language that we direct staff to bring this presentation and request BC Housing. And I can speak to that if it's not a friendly amendment or if it needs a bit more discussion.
Do you want to maybe start by restating the motion just so we're extra clear? Would that be helpful? Or do you think you got it? Because I'm not clear on the exact wording. I know the intent, but
yeah, I guess the wording I heard was to direct both, but we don't have the power to direct BC Housing. So I just want to make clear, and it's certainly my IBB. I think we have some follow-up steps if BC Housing neglects to come. I would expect they'd be welcome to, but I just, because of the scrutiny and concern on this topic, want to be clear, we direct our staff to make this happen and have them ask BC Housing to be part of it.
Councillor Stoner, I see nodding. Could that be a friendly amendment to direct staff and request BC Housing? That's the language change I heard from Councillor Pettingill.
I mean, I won't object to the amended language. I don't think it's necessary. We have partnership with BC Housing and they should show up in our community and we can continue to request that they do.
Yep. I think I'll leave it to, if we need to do a formal amendment, we'll do a formal amendment. Otherwise we can proceed. Would you like to make comment on the motion or offer an amendment?
No, I think I just want to make sure that people are clear on where, because there's a lot of that in this whole thing about where our authority lies. And so I just want to make sure that as we move forward, there's clarity there. I will, otherwise this makes sense. I don't have more to add at this point.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Greenlaw is the next 10. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to speak in support of the motion. For me, the most important part of the Heart and Hearth program is that it's rolled out well. We want this to be a success story, and we have a receptive community, generally speaking. So I just want to be sure that the voices that should be heard are heard, and that this is a well planned and well rolled out program. I don't think anybody would argue with the need that we have for this in our community, and I think we are generally a very receptive community to the Heart and Hearth program. I also think we need to listen to the members of our community. It's very important that they feel that they're heard, and we need to collaborate with the experts in the room. So I'm happy to support this to continue the conversation.
Thank you. Any other comments? Councillor Anderson, go ahead.
I gather that the focus of the motion is on, or the suggested presentation is on the Heart and Hearth program rather than the site selection process that we're under. And we've already heard from Mayor Herford that there will be more forthcoming from our district team on frequently asked questions and answer material. In any case, I think, and reflecting on Mayor Herford's comments around caution, around assumptions that we have a park and a park plan here. However, there's a qualification to that. In the years 2014 to 2015, the Downtown BIA was a formal partner with the district in park planning for One Eric Park. In fact, the name One Eric Park came from the Downtown BIA. And the funding application was a joint application. These park plans in 2014 through 2015 were interrupted by the need to address the diking. But we should note that qualification. In fact, we have been involved in park planning here, and the Downtown BIA has been a formal partner with the district at that time in those plans. We'd also note that the Chamber of Commerce and Tourism Squamish have been actively involved in the zoning of the park, not as formal partners, but as being giving important input. That would be 4 or 5 years ago. Just noting those qualifications, that we had some interruptions in our plans for that piece, and in as much as that may be relevant for the information materials or the Heart and Hearth as the staff decide. Thank you.
Thank you. Just some brief comments on this. Speaking in support, I think that I do think that it is important that the community is kept, that we're aware of what we should expect from engagement and hold the project accountable to those standards. I also think that council meetings aren't the best form of public engagement, and is really a safety net for what really should be happening as part of the good work in community. I think an important distinction that I want to make with this program is that for a lot of district initiatives, will operate and that are funded by the province, or it would be a grant program that would have very clear requirements, and we'd apply for it and be successful or not and be judged on certain criteria. That's not what this program is. This is a provincial program whose qualifications, how a community qualifies, is opaque. It's not something you put your name forward to participate in. You're sort of anointed by the province, and we are on a path where we will be unearthing those things of what it can look like. Other communities that have gone before us in the Heart and Hearth program it's looked different in each community where that's happened. In Kelowna, Campbell River, Prince George, these places were ahead of us, and each response looks different to address the concerns or the needs of that community at that time. So we can look to those for what we should expect sort of broadly, and then what that means in Squamish will come out. And I would expect that to happen in advance of this meeting that we're discussing, inviting or directing BC Housing to attend, because that's how it should be. But we'll have that there. I'm going to call a vote on this first, because we can't do it in the middle of that, and then we're going to move on. So with that, I'll call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Councillor Pettingill.
Yeah, I just did have some comments, not questions on the topic, and I wonder,
We have two more folks on the unscheduled public attendance lists, and maybe though I have a feeling there may be another opportunity to provide additional comment. Are you okay to hold for there?
Well, I guess my question on that and sort of why I raised my hand now is, I know more information is coming out as it can get out. You've added some context. I think there's some additional context, and I just wondered if to the degree there is some additional context we may want to share, if that may allow the next two speakers to avoid addressing something that, well, there's actually some information about that, or if we'd rather just sort of hear.
Let's go through the process, and I think there'll be opportunity to provide context if needed, or make a statement when we move receipt or some subsequent motion. Okay, we do need to move on, and okay, thank you so much. So I'll go to the other folks that had their hands up. You're welcome to. I think council will entertain additional submissions on this at this time. I will limit it to the 3. That part of it will hold. So go ahead, and we start in the same place where you start with your name and what you'd like to discuss, and then council needs to vote on hearing more. It is a awkward process, but that's the process in this room. So
my name is Matthew Upton. I'm a local resident and business owner in the downtown area, and I do want to talk regarding the location of the Hearth and Heart program from a business perspective.
Thank you for that. So, council, would we like to hear an additional submission on this? Councillor French, go ahead.
I'll move to hear from Mr. Upton.
Okay, seconded by Councillor Hamilton. I'll call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? Seeing none, motion carries. So go ahead. You've got 5 minutes to address council.
It's super concerning that we were not informed. We are the closest business to this proposed location, and we did not hear from the district regarding this location, which was what was going to happen. We've invested our life savings in establishing the broken seal and getting the broken seal to where it is today. And we've had ongoing issues with construction for the previous 1.5 years. And finally, we were at a point where we could see light at the end of the tunnel with the bridge completion and the park completion, which was being there. And saying that we're very optimistic for this summer and moving forward, as part of the process of choosing where we did for the broken seal was for everything which was happening in the downtown area. Since then, it's definitely the optimism has definitely changed since learning of this proposed location. Our company are actually days away from executing leases with the Bosa development with the amenities, where we are looking at putting significant investment into leasing 2 spaces. These 2 spaces are going to be for local jobs. It's going to be for the community, and it's something which is going to be adding to the downtown area, along with the community that we do have in the Sea to Sky. Like I said, we are days away of executing these leases, and we've actually put a hold on them with Bosa now until we get a bit more direction on exactly what's going to happen with this. From a resident standpoint, we do live in the Sea to Sky. We are looking at having a young family, and there are a lot of families in that area which are massively concerned regarding this. I think the communication piece that has been coming out has been very poor, and it has been looking like it has been trying to hide it and not let people know. We were forcing to meet on Friday, and we actually got to meet with one of the council members, Jonas. And we spoke to Jonas for an hour regarding this situation. And one of the major concerns that kept coming up when we were asking was regarding when there is going to be a public hearing. And the notice back from him was stating that because it's already zoned, that you don't need to do a public hearing. And even though we pushed back saying just because you don't need to doesn't mean that it's right, we feel on our side it is unacceptable. This is something which is going to impact massively the tourism industry. downtown businesses and the residents all within the area. I'll happily take questions, but also before I go, I do want to ask, if you guys do approve of this location, I'd love to see you raise your hands. It's a question I'm just asking to you guys. You don't have to by any means, but I'd love to see our council members who approve of this location.
Okay, thank you for your submission. Council, we've questions and we've been asked to, I'll say comment on the location, but do we have, just start any questions here or additional? If not, we can have move receipt and we can take some additional comments on location or anything else that folks feel is important at this point. Go ahead, Councilor Greenlaw.
I just wanted to make a question of clarity, just for the public record. Can you confirm, like, this location has not been confirmed, correct? Okay, so just so everybody knows, it has not been confirmed. So the conversation is ongoing.
Put forth. I was told that this is the only location which has been put forth.
So I think that the discussion on this, further discussion on this would be best supported by the engagement with our staff and BC Housing and the Hearth and Hearth folks, so we can really understand exactly what is proposed, because at this point in time it is about viability, and there's a lot of questions about what programming, if any, and so on, like really understanding what is the proposal, and we don't have those we don't have that information at this point in time. So I think going too far into commenting on it at this point wouldn't necessarily serve the process. Although your point is well taken, and perhaps we'll be able to share. Yeah, we'll see where that takes us.
We just want to make sure that there is going to be public input, because again, going back to the conversation on Friday, it was, we will get notified on what's happening, and there will be a Q&A which will happen after the location is chosen. That is not public input, in my opinion anyway.
Yeah, so we've heard that in our previous motion, we invited, I think we're backstopping this process with inviting them here to have the discussion. And when we say here, it's open to the public and recorded and all those things, so that we can get that information out. But I do expect that information and engagement to happen, and thus information resulting from that engagement to happen in advance of that.
But with you being the council members for us, do you agree with our concerns and everything which is being risen right now?
I'll leave that to council to comment on that. I will say again, Councillor Stoner made the point earlier, and I think it's an important distinction, is that every property in the community, this is an allowable use. So that's not every district held property, it's every property. So discussions around citing these things, these facilities, supportive housing facilities, it's not, it's the leasing piece of our particular property that makes that piece. So I think that we have supportive housing broadly throughout the community, and it doesn't, and some are more visible than others, but this is a use that happens already broadly throughout the community. And so I think that's an important distinction. Now, whether the control of leasing or using our land to do that is the decision point, but the siting piece is already something that is allowable. So it's not a normal, I would say, that makes this use exceptional in comparison to really any other use or normal zoning discussion that we would expect to have in this room. So it is different. I'll go to Councillor Stoner, and I also want to acknowledge we're not going to resolve this here today. Resolving this here today is shining a light on it and making commitments to ensure that that we surface these details going forward.
The
So,
commitment we just want is a public hearing before confirmed land. That's all we're asking for, and that's all I think. I think that's a very fair ask as residents, residents and business owners. We just want a voice.
Just on that point, I think there's a couple things. Is that just I understand the intent of that ask and the spirit of it. We are actually forbidden from holding public hearings on certain matters. I don't know if this is one of them, but there's more at play than not all of the decisions on that part all are at the discretion of council. So I understand what you're saying, but that's why you're not getting a clear
But then that's
ask on that.
a decision which is going to affect everybody, is going to be made by the few, which is unacceptable.
I'm not debating that part. I'm sharing one of the constraints that we have in this room when it comes to certain steps. So we and I don't know what that assessment is, but in a lot of cases, we are actually by provincial regulation, which is the regulations we operate under, we're actually forbidden from having a public hearing. So not all of these are active choices by council, and I think that's an important piece too. I understand what you're asking for, and we'll see how close we can get to that, if not that itself. So I'll go to Councillor Stoner, and then and Councillor Pettingill. We have gone substantively over our 15 minutes of this piece for a decision that isn't going to be made here this evening. So I want to try to move us through this piece so we can get on with our, not to disrespect the importance of the feedback, but these are the constraints we're working in. So I'm going to go to Councillor Stoner, then Pettingill.
I was going to move receipt and I'll make comments if it's seconded.
Will that be okay with you? Okay, seconded by Councillor Pettingill. Go ahead, Councillor Stoner.
Yeah, thank you. And thanks for being here and voicing your ongoing concerns. I appreciate that it takes a lot to both stay up to speed with the information that is coming out, as well as being able to coordinate and organize in order to make it here on a Tuesday evening. So thank you for being here. I do want to make an important distinction that I think the mayor touched on a little bit, but there's actually no ability. A public hearing is a very formal process that is defined in legislation. We actually have no ability to hold a public hearing for this because there is no rezoning required. It is an allowable use in all of our zones. That doesn't mean that we are off the hook from doing engagement, receiving public information. BC Housing has, in working with us and delivering in becoming a Hearth and Heart community, has identified that there is a need for temporary rapid housing and shelter for many folks who live in our community. The location where they decide to put that has a whole matrix of things that I am not fully aware of. It's why I made a previous motion to have them and our staff come forward to better understand what the constraints are that they're working in. And so, yes, I think more fulsome conversation on that is necessary. I want to set clear expectations that a formal public hearing is not possible from my perspective, both from a legislative perspective, from community charter, there's no rezoning. And then even if it was a rezoning, if things are over 50% residential, we are prohibited from holding a public hearing based on provincial legislation. And so it's just the language component, and apologies if I'm picking on it a little bit. It's not to take away from the fact that there should still be engagement. It's just a hearing process is not what we'll get to at the end of this. And I want to be clear about that because folks deserve clarity in this. But what we will do is make sure that we have better certainty on how we engage and what the decision points are for this council versus BC Housing in the province. Thanks.
Thank you for that. I appreciate extra clarification on my points, and that was Councillor Pettingill. Go ahead.
Yeah, and just want to recognize that I know more information is coming. Just like to note that when we are dealing with government agencies, sometimes there are rules around when and how we can talk about things. And again, we are creatures of the province. So the province makes all of our rules and gives us a little sandbox to play in, and we can make rules within that sandbox, but we have to stay and work within their sandbox. And so some of where we are having some caution and so on is making sure that we are staying with the processes that we have to doesn't mean we aren't listening and trying to work with that and adjust even and push our partners to adjust when we see, hey, things are clearly falling short here and we need you guys to step up, and we have those conversations. So it's a bit awkward sometimes as we try to work through these, again, in the sandbox that we have to work in. And so you had a question about, do we support this location? I don't have all the information yet. I have been paying attention. I think the other implicit question is, are you listening to what people have written? And absolutely. I just want to provide some context that almost every decision we make, there are people on 2 or 3 or 4 different sides, and we end up pleasing some people and disappointing others. And that's the reality of life on a council. And so I don't know what the outcome of this is. There's more information to come for us and the community. I want to add, just because in a bunch of the emails and comments, I've said, are you listening to the community members? Are you listening to residents? Yes. And I think it's really important that the folks that are struggling with homelessness, some with mental health, some with addiction, some with 2, some with all 3, are residents and community members. When I moved here in 2005, there's a banner across the highway, "Don't meth around." And I think that my understanding is that was tied to the loss of industry and people losing their jobs. We're hearing that one of the biggest demographics of homeless growth in homeless from Helping Hands in the homeless community is seniors, because old age hasn't kept up with the cost of living. And so as we talk about, are we listening to residents? Yes. And that includes the homeless people and the people that are struggling. And somehow as a community, we have to put this all together and figure out how to move forward. One of the reasons I love this community, I thought about living in Whistler, I saw people volunteering, caring about each other. Helping Hands has been downtown for 20 years with these folks. These folks have been living downtown, not same individuals. Some is the same individuals, some it's new folks, but they have been part of our community, our downtown community. I see them sleeping for years now in Junction Park, in Juanette Park before the construction started. And my understanding of Supreme Court ruling, so Canada Supreme Court, is that regardless of homelessness and housing is the province's responsibility, even if the province isn't living up to that, the Supreme Court is saying it is a human rights violation to shut down an encampment when people have nowhere else to go. Even if it's a terrible option, if that is their best option, you cannot shut down an encampment. So we have some encampments downtown, which are causing challenges for businesses, for people living around. And if we don't do something like the Hearth and Heart program, then our ability to manage encampments, and I'm not saying this is a reason to do anything, I'm just trying to add context of these are all the things we're having to consider. And so we don't have, unless we, this Hearth and Heart program is not an unlimited program, it's an incredibly limited program. The province has been really restricted about who gets it. And so one of the things as a community we're going to have to sort out is, if this isn't to our liking, and we've seen it in Coquitlam and
I think you're thinking about Penticton, but I'm going to use the opportunity to say that you're over your speaking time.
Yeah,
I know that there's a ton on this from in the room and at the table, so I'm going to ask you to wrap it up. I think you're citing Penticton, though. I'll throw you that one, and then if you could wrap it up, we'll move on.
So, as a community, and this will be part of our discussion, I just want to highlight there are many, many additional factors that beyond what's coming out in the email. And all this information is part of the reason I think my colleague asked for the presentation. This information has been presented at different times. It's in provincial sites and our site and so on, but pulling it all together I think is really important as part of this. And these are the things that we are going to have to sort through as a community. One of the risks, as we've seen in Penticton, is if you turn away Hearth and Hearth, you may end up with encampments that grow or that you can't deal with. And again, further discussions, but it's not so simple as, well, we don't like this location, goodbye, and end of story, it's easy solution. So anyways.
So sorry, we're in the, sorry, sir, we're in the, I know we have to deal with process. This is council's opportunity. We should be sort of debating ourselves / making statements here to sway a vote, but we're just working towards receiving the submission. So unfortunately, it's not an opportunity for, sorry, it's so structured. I think, anyways, I'm going to go on to Councillor French, I believe is your next on speaking list.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor Herford. And like Councillor Pettingill, I too am listening. And one of the important components of a public hearing from our perspective is we go into them with an open mind. And I think for me, I'm very much at that open mind stage where I'm reading all the emails that are coming into us, expressing all the concerns. And while we realize there's no opportunity for a public hearing, that is a form of public input. And what we have happening tonight is public input. This is all part of council bringing in the community information, the community feedback as council works towards a decision on this program, on this initiative, and working with BC Housing. I need more information. So when there was a suggestion that council members put up their hands, who's willing to support this now? I don't have enough information to be able to do that. So I am prepared to continue to bring in all the information, including email messages from residents, phone calls, however people wish to communicate their concerns, their ideas. I will take it because this is the open-minded part of our process where we work towards formulating our opinions on this.
Thank you very much. Others on this? Yeah, thank you really for taking the time to come today. I think I recognize our processes are not necessarily user friendly. It's a process we need to follow. So, and I agree. Every piece of correspondence is a piece of input that goes into our minds as we make these decisions. And whatever comes forward, I think needs to address the concerns, such as the ones you outlined and others we've seen through correspondence. And the plan to address those needs to be, needs to be fulsome enough to make it supportable. That's what makes something supportable in my opinion. So again, early days. Thank you so much for your submission. I don't have anyone else on my speakers list, so I'm going to call the question. All in favor? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you so much. The conversation is not done. This will continue broadly in community. Sir, I had a hand over here. Would you still like to address count? You can. Sir, I've got a gentleman in the front. I'm just going to see if this is a different subject. I might figure out how we shuffle this. Just same subject. Okay. So our rules for this piece state that we are meant to have, if there's more than one person who wants to speak to a subject, to nominate a spokesperson, or to a maximum of 3 for 15 minutes. We are approaching the hour mark, and I would allow the 3 piece, but I don't know if you guys want to have a quick discussion about how you want to do that. I'll leave it to that part of the democratic process, and then we'll. Sorry, we can't for the record, like people speaking in the audience don't make it onto the video or the audio for those participating remotely. So I just need you guys can have a quick conference, and whoever you decide, your rock, paper, scissors, I don't know what you're going to do. And I'll give you a moment to do that. This is the most democratic way I can figure out how to do this given where we are in this process. So. Yep. I love it. Thank you very much for actively participating in democracy. So if you could start by stating your name and a short sentence about what it's about.
Yeah.
You're an old hand at this point. Go ahead.
Job, Mayor. I appreciate you. My name is Paul Arcus. I just want to note that we've been here for 51 minutes. I know it's the same topic, but as a community, we've had about 8 minutes combined to speak to this. I would love to give my 5 minutes as a layman, as a member of the community. I can completely appreciate and understand that this is clearly a topic that you've heard a bit about. I'm happy to offer some local insight and some new notes off the gentleman here, but I do think due process is due process. And I do say it is interesting now that we've had 8 minutes to speak on a topic, and the rest of the council has had a chance to speak for the 45 of those minutes. So I would just ask if you could give me a few minutes. I'm okay if you don't, that's okay.
Thank you very much. I saw a hand over here. Councillor French, are you moving that we hear from the jump?
Yes, I'll move to hear from the
Second
director.
by Councillor Greenlaw. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, the floor is yours.
I represent the community, obviously. I had the pleasure of meeting John on the weekend. We bumped into each other and had a really good chat, and I appreciate that. I know it's tough with community members being concerned and wanting to discuss things, but I certainly some really interesting things about this tonight. It's the lack of preparation from the council side, knowing that you've had a week to prepare a little bit of a response for the group. There's over 650 concerned citizens who've signed the petition who are concerned about the location. I think I can't get any more. I don't want to pretend I'm more articulate. Thank you for representing the tourism Squamish. There's some the BIA, tourism Squamish. But as a community member, I could tell you that a couple of quick things. I'll say the intent. I love that we're not talking about that. The intent is there. We know we need to house the unhoused. We know we have issues. We know we have rent issues. But one thing that really stood out to me straight away when I was chatting with John on the weekend was the idea that they're not in my backyard. And I think people need to understand that I lived in the Accra, and I'd explain this, that I'd been through this process, and we'd had some encampments around our area. And then under one roof was a proposed solution, a really great and noble thing that we went through, building under one roof. But I think what we're realizing now is that these things are magnetic. They attract more of the issue. When we're stating that we have a certain number of people that need housing right now, that's right now. When we start to not have exit strategies and exit plans based on these temporary housing things, I agree with you completely, Chris. I think it's super important that we address this. I think what we really are debating as a community, or what we're concerned with as a community, is literally just the location of this. I was down there on the weekend. Fox and Oak had, I think, 35 to 40 people for a cafe. Tourism is huge. Businesses are huge. People like us, I agree, we've completely invested our entire life savings. We're riding the lightning on our paychecks, keeping our jobs to stay in our homes. I tell you right, under one roof, if you go into those encampments, I tell you right now, it's going to make you uncomfortable. Public masturbation, human feces, pets dying from ingesting the feces laced with drugs. This is the stuff that we face as citizens. And when we come here and we say, hey, we've got 15 minutes, can we tell you how worried we are because of the lack of detail and clarity you've given us as community members? Knowing that we've had time to prepare this since Feb 9th. On Feb 9th, you shared that more information would come. Now, as a citizen, I'm like, cool, when's this information coming? It's like a hammer. You drop it on us, and then now we're sitting here going, hey, we've got these questions, and everyone says, well, there's just not enough information right now. You really got to clarify that for us. There's a reason why our heart rates go through the roof, because we've stepped out of our doors and been near syringes. We've had our propane tank stolen. We've had our gas siphoned. We've had our windows broken. It is getting progressively worse. No one can debate that. This is the snake eating its tail scenario. I really truly believe that if this isn't managed well, it will become a problem. By your own admission, Chris, you've said this is an extremely limited resource to manage this program. That's the exact kind of concern we have. We already don't have enough RCMP, mental health support in this community. We already don't have enough resources. Our population is absolutely growing. I understand that there's challenges, I get it, but continually I think there's a mistrust from the community, from this council, where we feel like we've been blindsided. Parking variances keep happening, wood fibre LNG, the list goes on, and I understand and appreciate how difficult these things are to balance, but the information sharing is the thing that's missing the most for us as people that live in these communities. It really is a difficult time. I've got a list a mile long. I think you've heard it. I think it's really clear to us that the parking brake needs to get pulled here from the council, and you need to go back and look at these emails. But I really think you need to appreciate how tough it is to sit here and say, we are listening, we are listening. We've all got auto replies to the emails. It doesn't feel like listening when you just get the same auto reply on the topic. Yeah, we know it's a concern. That's the feeling that we've got. I really don't want the Squamish sucks don't go turning from in jest to a true ironic statement. That's the toughest part. Just now, my partner sent me a thing on Instagram. Literally just now, Squamish waterfront has been shared. Already it has 800 shares and 400 comments. If you don't think this is going to have an impact on local businesses and tourism, your heads are in the sand. And I really think it's time you really start to think of the broader picture, what we want this town to be in a year, and just consider the input that we've got from a community. Public hearings might not be possible. Come out and engage with us. Come and have a coffee with us. Book a time, sit in the park, tell us you want to be there and listen, have a back and forward. I think even the fact that I had to beg for the rest of the 15 minutes tonight tells me, are we really listening? Or is it just noise? Is the decision made? Because, yeah, I think I really will. I just want to have a quick look at this, but I do agree with a lot of the notes here. Public endangerment, I think I've mentioned that. Children in vulnerable places. I walked the same path that John walked on the weekend. We happened to just be walking next to each other, and I took videos of it. The piles of poop everywhere, the needles. It's like, what are we doing here? Like, I know these are complex issues, they're complex community issues, but it's so tough when your car can get towed for being in a parking zone more than 7 minutes over, but someone can entrench an encampment and we can't even control what's in that encampment. You know, I think that's like the reality of our daily lives is thinking, did my car get broken into this morning? I had equipment from work in my truck today and I had to have a friend drive because I didn't want to park the truck out the front tonight. This is happening right now, right here. And we can go for a walk after this. I know you've got lots of subjects you need to broach, but it's like 3 blocks away and it's gotten worse and worse and worse over time. Under one roof was that strategy. It's showing, it's teaching us what's coming. AI is coming. More people will have difficulty finding work.
You've passed the 6-minute mark. I'm going to have
I'll
to ask
take
you
it.
to tie it up at the end. I'll give you another couple seconds to do that if you'd like.
Yeah, I think honestly, most people hit it here, but you know, I think for the residents of Squamish, like if we're not happy what's happening here, I think we just need to get out and vote ultimately when the time comes. I hope it doesn't come to that. I appreciate all the hard work that goes into running this community, but for those listening online and in the community, we really need to start putting our votes in and making ourselves heard, because at this point, it really doesn't feel like, it feels like this is a one-way conversation. Thank you for the time.
Thank you very much. Council, I think if I'm reflecting on how the last few comments went, I'll move receipt and we can make some comments to what we've heard here. So seconded by Councillor French. Thank you for coming. I said earlier that council meetings are poor forms of public engagement. This is that,
This is the
right?
problem,
It is a really hard format. So, but council, myself, and both as mayor and as a councillor, I read every piece of correspondence that comes in. From time to time. There's a subject that ends up being a bit of a, you know, not something that there's capacity to engage with individually. We try to get that information out. Those also inform things like frequently asked questions sections on various project pages or whatever the subject is, or sometimes it's respond with or you know, on social media to ensure that the correct information's out if it's a if there's a gap. So response looks a little different each time. On the having a conversation piece, I trying to think of how many meetings I would have said no to, which would be, I don't know that I ever have. So
It's just
more than welcome. I'm more than happy to meet individually. We strive to be as open as possible on all of our matters, both in open meetings like we're doing here, but also through the monthly mayor's drop-in where the acting mayor comes with. We have great community discussions. I know that those timings don't work for everybody. We try to find that mixed bag of things. But at the same time, you know, I love the story about running into an elected official as you're out on your walk. That's the great thing about local government. We are in community. I personally live downtown. I am in this building early in the morning, late at night. I'm back and forth intentionally through the area. And this is a complicated issue. We've had similar evenings where folks have come and been asking with a similar level of concern and passion in the arguments to do something to address the encampments. And it is really, really challenging concept. And I think accepting the status quo isn't something any of us are interested in here either. So it's how do we harness the organization that we have and the resources offered from other orders of government to have the best outcome. And that's the journey that we're on together. It is a journey. We're not there. We're not there yet. I will say that in other Hearth and Hearth communities, the temporary, the bridge housing or the temporary housing has only had services for the people that live there. So there's a very distinct difference to a facility like Under One Roof, which has walk-in services, drop-in services that pulls people that need those services from whatever the catchment area is. It's a very, so what has happened in other places, and my expectation here is that if there are services on site, they are for the people that are living there, not a drop-in thing. I think that's an important piece, and that is something I'll be looking for when it is time for a decision on this matter. But I think we're not talking about Under One Roof version 2 in any of this discussion. I just wanted to address that point. There's many other points.
That's the information we just need to hear as a
Yep.
community,
Yep.
with examples from current temporary housing
Yep.
that shows that isn't true, or that is true. Yeah.
So we'll have this is stuff that we'll continue to get some information out on. I'll just go see if anyone else would like to make a comment here, and then Councillor Pettingill.
Yeah, just a few things. And I will say for my part, I've been reading all the emails. We meet typically once a week, and we are not, when we as a group, like we can't get on a Zoom call in between meetings because that's considered a legal meeting. It has to be public. So we are we get together once a week. We have to make sure it's on the agenda so that public knows ahead. And so my understanding from what I heard from staff was that some information was coming out from BC Housing to address some of the questions coming in. So I was holding back on responding to anything because I didn't want to add confusion to the mix, which maybe I've even done tonight. But I wanted some of that official first information to come out first. And now I am happy as much as I can to meet one-on-one, go for coffees and so on. I think it is important, and I'll say it on behalf of my colleagues. I think aside from the mayor, most of us all have at least one other job because this is, and so happy to work as much as I can to sit down and chat with people. I want to clarify, when I said the Hearth and Hearth is very limited, I wasn't implying that when it comes into a community, what it offers that community is very limited. I'm sort of saying they have $25 million budgets. Yes, it's exclusive. So only a couple communities get in, and then no one else gets the help. And so my understanding is if you get in, it's quite a robust framework for helping with encampments. That will be part of the discussion. Do we feel comfortable that it's robust enough? I want to also just sort of raise the point, because I've heard it before, we've seen what happened with Helping Hands. Helping Hands came and all these problems came. It's maybe worth reflecting and looking across the country. My partner just came back from her hometown. She's like, there's tents everywhere. That's never happened. I'm not sure that it's Helping Hands. What I am seeing, talking to colleagues across Canada, there's an explosion of encampments across Canada. As a society, we are doing a terrible job of taking care of people on the margins, and increasingly not just on the margins. It's creeping into, like, everyone's having trouble. And so this is what we're trying to grapple with. And when I just wanted to clarify one other piece. Regardless of how much we want this to be the decision, the choice we have as a community and as a council may not be which location does Hearth and Hearth go on. Our choice may be, do we get it or do we have encampments? And I don't like that choice, but that may be the choice that we're in. And so we're going to have to work together as a community, understand the reality of what we're facing. And I think that's what, as a council, we will grapple with, we've been grappling with, and all of us are going to have to grapple with. And so I just want to be clear. I'm hearing loud and clear about the concern of that location. We may not have a location choice, and it may be encampments continued, or that because of where the Supreme Court is, or I suppose trying to launch an injunction, spending millions of dollars to get injunction through, I suppose might be our third choice. And I don't know that that's where we're going to end up, but I just want to, we'll find more about it. But this is the sort of realm that we're working in, not just Squamish, but many communities. And I hate that this is the situation. I think we all do. This is what we're having to find a way to work through.
Thank you. Go ahead, Councillor French.
Councillor Pettingill expressed my thought.
I won't ask you to clarify which one. Any other comments on this, Councillor Hamilton?
Yeah, thank you very much for everybody for coming and speaking. There's the words public hearing that has a very specific meaning within the municipal context. It is holding a public hearing is different from hearing from the public. It's extraordinarily important that we are hearing from the public, and we are, like, I read, and I know my council colleagues too, all of the emails that you send. I particularly value the emails that people write themselves. When we get a auto-generated email, I'd like to encourage folks to, that dilutes things. 650 people on a petition, that's as valuable as 650 emails in my inbox that say the same thing. So I want to hear from the public. That's a really important piece of it. And one of the things I want to encourage, there's a lot of energy here, and I've heard a lot of people talk very positively about knowing that we have a challenge in Squamish that we need to find a solution for. We need to work forward. And for all of the energy that we focus on why not here, I'd like to encourage everybody to think, then where? And this isn't your responsibility. I'm not putting it on you. I'm not putting it on you. But I want to hear where is appropriate. That's the piece. That's the really hard piece. Sitting around this table, there's no perfect spot. And that's one of the hard pieces. And speaking to Councillor Pettingill's, ultimately this is a BC Housing. It's a partnership with BC Housing. So it may not be ultimately our choice.
I think just briefly, earlier we were asked to raise our hand if we supported the site selection. When any subject comes forward for me, my process is, what is the exact question I'm going to be asked here? And exactly what's the alternate? What's the the operations of, what is the exact question? And that's where we don't have enough information. Councillor Pettingill did some speculation. We've heard others around the table saying we don't really know the exact question we're being asked. Site is one of the pieces, but there will be more. And that when it gets to that point, I think it's totally reasonable for the public to have the expectation that they've been engaged with and along the way, as we are grappling with what is a very complicated problem in our community and a legal landscape to address it. I see your hand, Councillor Stoner. We'll give you the last word on this, and then we'll call the question.
Yeah, thanks through the chair. Just a few comments on process, and appreciate the concerns around the amount of time that the public has had to speak. I think to the mayor's previous point, this is a really awkward way to engage with the public, and it's the reason why our procedures bylaw limits it, because it's not necessarily the most productive way to do it. I appreciate that folks might feel heard when they stand at the podium, but it's not, given the context that we're in and the decision before us today, we really can't move a solution forward on this topic or anything else usually that comes at unscheduled public attendance. We can direct staff to bring forward a presentation with more information. And I hear you that we should maybe have more information now, given that the announcement came in February. This is a BC Housing-led project. We can only move as fast as our external agency, and I don't mean to point fingers here. But the decision, I think, that lies, part of that is it is also on them to do the engagement. I think it's important for us to continue to engage with them on the understanding of what the standard and the expectation should be for their level of engagement with the community when they start to do this type of work. The question, though, very much is is this something that, the work that they are pursuing now that kind of initiated some of this is investigating the feasibility of that site. So whether they do engagement before even knowing if it's a viable site, I would say is challenging. So that's part of the work that they're doing, is even to see whether this is a reasonable site from what the needs are from the Hearth program. I do, do appreciate that that's maybe not sufficient in what folks wish we had in terms of information between the announcement and today. That is the work that is going on, is trying to understand exactly what those sites are and what the site availability is. And then I very much hear from folks that there is a willingness and interest in having a community conversation about the trade-offs there. And I think that's our due diligence on council, is how do we make sure that we structure that conversation in an effective way and make sure that there's space for our community to do that. And that's something that I'm happy to commit to going forward. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Stoner. With that, I'll call the question. All in favor? Motion carries. Okay. Thank you so much for everyone that made a submission and came for this portion of the meeting. We will move on to item 5, public hearings. Believe it or not, development permit number 641 for 38140 Third Avenue. We'll give staff a moment to get set up and then we will hear presentation. Hello. Are you ready to go? The floor is yours. Take it away.
All right, good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Carrie Hamilton, planner for the District of Squamish, and I'll be presenting for today for Council's consideration Development Permit 641 with variances located at 38140 Third Avenue. So 38140 Third Avenue is located at the southeast corner of Pemberton Avenue and Third Avenue. It is designated Downtown Commercial Center in the OCP and Zone CD 118. Neighboring zoning includes R1 zoning, C4 zoning, and other CD zones. DP 641 is subject to Development Permit Area 3, which is the Universal Guidelines, DPA 5 Commercial Center for Form and Character Guidelines. The project is also subject to DPA 2, which is for flood hazard, and DPA 11 wildfire hazard. So this development project was first presented to Council for consideration at the rezoning stage on June 17, 2025 for 3 readings. The bylaw was adopted on April 7, 2026. DP 641 underwent several design changes from its original rezoning and DP submission, as seen on the images on the screen. The proposal was presented to the Advisory Design Panel for feedback on the March 19, 2026 meeting, and the panel was supportive of the proposal as presented with some provided suggestions that have been included into the final design before Council today. DP 641 proposes a 6-story mixed-use building with 530 meters squared of ground floor commercial and 45 residential units. Residential units include 5 11% adaptable units and 9, which is 20% 3-bedroom and junior 3-bedroom units, in compliance with CD 118. The development is proposing a 3rd floor courtyard, an indoor amenity space, and a large rooftop amenity space programmed with seating and community garden beds. A partial green roof treatment is also included around the roof perimeter. The development is proposing natural wood tone colors and includes several public art murals. The project is committed to offer a district-owned public art contribution. The development is generally in alignment with DPA 3 and DPA 5 guidelines, with a detailed review found in attachment 1 in your report. DP 641 includes 45 parking stalls in compliance with CD 118, and the zone secured 4 residential stalls, which will be shared with commercial users. 7 commercial stalls will be bought out using the zoning bylaws cash and lieu provision, and a car share membership for each residential unit will be provided in accordance with the land development agreement. There are 94 Class A indoor bicycle parking stalls provided, 45 provided in a secured bike room, and 1 in each residential unit. There are 4 commercial bike stalls and 12 Class B, which are outdoor bicycle stalls. DP641 proposes 2 minor variances to the parking design regulations to accommodate the unique geography of the site. The first variance is to reduce drive aisle widths from 6.5 meters, which is a 2-way design, to a 3.65 meter 1-way design, managed by flashing light signals and signage. Staff are supportive of this proposed variance because of the site's smaller site, irregular shape, and grading. The combined angled streetscape with the land dedication uniquely limits the space in the second floor parkade. The 1-way drive aisle allows for more parking stalls to be accommodated in the parkade. 1-way drive aisle ramps with signalized light systems have been previously supported in downtown Squamish for smaller developments and are particularly supported on laneways. Variance number 2 is to reduce stall length for 5 stalls in the parkade from 5.3 meters to 4.6 meters, as identified by the yellow stalls on the slide. This proposal was accompanied by an engineering parkade design memo that ensured the stalls could be used by common compact cars such as a Jeep Cherokee, Nissan Rogue, Hyundai Tucson, Ford Escape. The project also compensated by adding 5 longer stalls with 5.8 meter lengths at the laneway, as identified by the red and dark green stalls on the slide. Staff are supportive of the proposed variance for similar site constraint reasons outlined in variance 1, but particularly to this variance, the reduced stall length is a result of the loss of that 2.5 meters land dedication along Third Avenue. The reduced length still accommodates many vehicle types and avoids the alternative of offering less parking overall for the site. The variance is further rationalized by the addition of 5 large length stalls that exceed the minimum downtown stall length. So for public engagement to inform the community per policy, the project was posted on the District Development Review webpage, and a development sign has been posted at the site. No requests for a public information meeting were received, and no comments were received. Notifications have been sent in accordance with the Local Government Act prior to consideration of the 2 variances. Staff have referred the application to relevant internal and external departments and incorporated their comments. Staff's recommendation this evening is that Council authorize the approval of Development Permit 641 as presented, and that the development permit includes variances to those following sections in the zoning bylaw, which includes the width of the drive aisle and minimum length of space for only 5 stalls. It also includes motion for the cash in lieu to be directed to the alternative forms of transportation reserve fund, and that the mayor and corporate officer be authorized to issue DP 641 following the registration of a wildfire hazard covenant. Alternatively, council can deny the issuance of development permit 641 as presented, or they can refer it back to staff. Refusal or referral back to staff will delay progress of the project and may impact the economic viability to deliver the project overall. That concludes my presentation for this evening, and welcome council's feedback.
Thank you very much for the presentation. Council, questions? Councillor Anderson, go ahead.
The staff presentation has noted the recommendation that the cash in lieu of commercial parking stalls in the amount of $210,000 be directed to the alternative forms of transportation reserve fund. I wonder if staff could remind me what the name is of another fund, which is for parkades or parking facilities. Do you recall offhand what the name of that fund may be?
Through the chair, we can take a look and get back to council in a couple of minutes.
Thank you.
Councillor Anderson, do you have an additional question, or you're okay? So we'll endeavor to get that answer before we contemplate motion. Okay. Other questions, council? I'll venture one of my own. This scenario of the narrower drive aisle to accommodate the parking and so on, these the same parking numbers are these the same parking numbers we saw at rezoning? And was this narrower drive aisle contemplated at that point in time to achieve that, and this is sort of papering that, or is this just as the design advanced to this development permit stage, it became apparent that it wasn't going to be possible to achieve the parking without the parking commitments without the narrower drive aisle?
That's a great question. At the rezoning level, there was some acknowledgement that there might be some constraints to the parking design, but that we were not willing to put that into a zone, and that it was going to be explored further at development permit, which it has through this process. Thank you.
So here we are. Okay, that makes but the numbers here reflect what we heard at zoning. It was just the not the what that has changed, but the how.
Correct. The numbers are exactly the same. Just these details are different.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, through the chair, we have the previous answer to Councillor Anderson's question. The name of the fund is the Municipal Off-Street Parking Facilities Reserve Fund.
Thank you. Councillor Stoner, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Through the chair. The staff report, I think, just mentions that the one-way drive aisle is something that has been used in other buildings. Can staff just clarify where that may be and or any concerns with existing versions of the one-way drive aisle?
Through the mayor, I don't have an exact address for you. I do know the name of the development. Maybe we can pull up the exact address, but it's the Ashley building, which is just at the corner of Victoria and 2nd Avenue. They had a one-way drive aisle access off the laneway that was approved by council. We have not seen interior driveway aisles and parkades been considered before, but we have seen the ramp itself. We also have signalization ramps for the Vantage building, which is just on Pemberton Avenue. They have 2 different parkade accesses, which are controlled by one actual driveway access off Pemberton.
Thank you for reminding me of those other examples. Appreciate that.
Thank you. Council, any other, go ahead, Councillor Hamilton.
Yeah, I hesitated asking this question because it's more of a curiosity than relevant to my decision. The short parking stalls, do they get do these parking stalls, do you purchase a parking stall with the unit? And so you sort of commit to buying a short car or owning a short car as long as you own your house? Or how does that work? And by the way, this is not an objection. It's just me trying to understand.
Through the mayor, that level of detail is not reviewed by staff, but typically what we've seen, it relates to however the developer makes those contracts with the rental units. Usually there's flexibility within a strata to find the right stall for the right owner.
Right, this is a rental unit or ownership?
Yeah, through the mayor, it's ownership.
Okay, great, thanks. Yeah.
Okay, council, so we have the need for questions following those submissions, if any. So I think we'll move to that part of the meeting. So I do have a script to run through, so please bear with me. So the proponent and members of the public will be given the opportunity to be heard with respect to council's consideration of development variance permit number DP000641. The proposed variances to the District of Squamish zoning bylaw number 2200/2017 are outlined in the development variance permit included as part of the agenda and available on the district's website. Members of the public are reminded that you may only speak to the proposed variances. which are Section 41CI, which is the width of the drive aisle, from 6.5 meters, which would be two ways, to 3.65 meters, which would be one way. And Section 41C6, minimum length of a space for 5 parking stalls. That is proposed to be varied from 5.3 meters in length to 4.6 meters in length. So your comments would need to be specific to those variances. We're trying to make this a safe space for everyone to voice their opinion without interference from others. Therefore, I ask that members of the public maintain order and quiet during the process. Please do not applaud or interrupt any speech or action of members of council or any other person addressing council. All speakers will be given a maximum of 3 minutes to address council. For all speakers, please start your remarks by clearly stating your name and neighborhood. So, is our practice to save the first speaking opportunity for a representative from the Squamish Nation, which I do not see in the room, and I don't believe we have online. Looking to our moderator. Not.
No hands currently up.
Thank you. So now I'll ask the applicant or the representative to comment, should they wish to, after which anyone else will be given opportunity to speak. If you're participating online, just the instructions on how to raise your hand are on your screen. And just a heads up, I'm going to start within the room, and then we'll be checking online. So it gives you those folks a moment to figure out that mechanism. So I'll just ask the applicant if they wish to comment on this permit. We're seeing we are not going to have comment from the applicant this evening, so I'll go to the public. I'll now call on any members of the public. Each speaker will have up to 3 minutes to address council. I'll first call on speakers participating in person. Please raise your hand and wait to be recognized and approach the podium. And again, instructions are on the district's website for online participants, and there is a moderator who will communicate with people participating online. Is there anyone that wishes to speak to this permit? Perfect. Please come on up and we'll get you at the podium, and you have up to 3 minutes to address council. Please start with your name, neighborhood, and then the floor is yours.
Chris Martin, I'm in Garibaldi Highlands. I have actually Councillor Hamilton asked one question I had was about the parking stalls. Are they assigned? Because to me, if I'm a potential buyer, that's quite important, because I think the meters, it works about 15 feet in length, I think. So it would have some limitations to some people in Squamish, I'm sure. The main question I have is, any variances, do they meet the smell test? You know, I'm looking at reducing the size of the laneway to one way rather than two ways, and the flashing light system. Has any consideration been given to the safety aspect in terms of access and egress of people who are coming and going? Just a thought. Okay, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Sorry, one other piece of this is opportunity to make a submission to council, and then following submissions, if there's multiples, then council can choose to pick up some pieces of that and try to explore getting answers to that. So you have some time on the clock if you have any additional information you'd like to submit at this point. Okay, then we'll go. Thank you very much for your submission, and we'll move on. Is there anyone else in council chambers that wishes to make a submission on this matter? I'm not seeing any, so I'll check with our online moderator. Nope, we have no one online. So this, I'll do a final check of the room. I see no hands. So the time for public submissions is now closed. I will ask council if there's any further information the planning department might provide in response to any comments or questions raised by members of the public. Councillor French, go ahead.
Thanks, Mayor Herford. I just wonder if staff might be able to shed a little bit of light on the technical aspects of reducing the width of the drive aisle. Is there supporting reports or engineering that talks about changes like this from a safety perspective?
Through the mayor, there are no technical reports that have spoken to the one-way drive aisle specifically, we did have them look at the parking design and the parking stalls. But from our understanding is that given the small nature of this development, this is something that we would not be supportive of if the access was maybe on a major road and would cause constraints to regular traffic. It's at the end of a laneway, so it's likely to not impact anyone. So if someone had to wait in the laneway to get into the parking garage, there likely would not be a constraint to the public moving on a public roadway. There's also, given the amount of stalls, the parkade itself, I believe, well, it's I don't know the exact number. I think there's a few outside on the laneway, so it's less than 45 stalls that these one-way drive aisle would access, and that there's likely not going to be many conflicts in terms of people queuing and waiting to try and get in and out, and that the light systems themselves work very efficiently with signage, and that residents are using this, so it's not public access, so people are not general publics are not using this. These become habits for those residents. Hopefully that's enough clarification.
Yes, that's helpful, combined with the fact that we've got 2 of these already functioning nicely.
Just on this point, this width 3.65, I like that it's in our report, it's in brackets one way. Like that width is a standard width that comes from other, if there was a access through one port and egress through another port, that width is would be considered a relatively standard dimension for a one-way aisle?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Council, any additional questions before seeing none? I'm through my speakers list. We do have a recommendation before us. Would you like to move the staff recommendation? I'll second that. Would you like to speak to it?
Yes, please. So the parking variance for me is supportable due to what I think is a brilliant idea of each unit. So that's each unit having a car share membership. So the car share membership will run with the unit, not the person or people living in the unit at any given time. And I think that works extremely well for this development and for developments like this in our downtown. Also making the variance supportable for me is our ongoing efforts to improve the transit system, specifically by increasing the bus frequency into and out of our downtown. And we've seen this drive aisle width work in other places in Squamish, so I expect that it's going to work here, as we heard from staff. It's a dead-end laneway and a fairly small number of stalls inside the building. And then as for the 5 stalls with reduced lengths, I think we've seen that work in other places as well. And my final thought, sometimes it's just the small details that make a big difference, and I'm a bit of a sucker for public art. So the fact that on this building we're going to have not just 1, not 2, 3 murals is a very nice touch. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you. Additional comments? Councillor Anderson, go ahead.
I regret to say I will not be supporting this the staff recommendation. First of all, I'll make some more general comments. I think that we have a case of a journey that has lasted some length of time for a smaller local developer. And I'm finding myself better and better aware of the distinct circumstances of smaller local developers. And I'd like to note in my interface with the developer and review of these documents, the efforts that are made, the details, the efforts to convince the community and council of the merits of this development. I think that the site has its challenges, as staff have cited in explaining their support for the variances, and I support these variances. I do regret that there is not more color in the facade, and that we are not more generally encouraging more lively facades in our downtown area. It is a wood tone color, and perhaps it's been shaped, no doubt, as I perceive from the dialogue through the advisory design panel and other venues. Now, the reason I will not be supporting the recommendation is the issue of the fate of the fee in lieu for the commercial parking stalls. I would prefer that this instead be directed, these funds, to the municipal off-street parking facilities reserve fund for these reasons. I have in front of me a page from the report delivered in 2023.
Councillor Anderson, I have a suggestion. I'm not going to cut your comments. This would be an opportunity to propose an amendment, in which case perhaps your next pieces of your notes could be in support of that argument, and then we can debate that one piece. I just want to offer that as a path to you. Back to you, however you'd like to proceed from here.
I guess I'm concerned, Mayor Herford, that if there is no seconder for my proposed amendment, I would not have a chance to speak to these matters.
Choose your path, Councillor. Go ahead.
So I have in front of me the 2023 downtown parking study, which has a paragraph regarding the 2020 downtown parkade study. The 2023 study by Morth and Hirschfield makes it quite explicit. They assume that the information and recommendations of the downtown parkade study are matters of ongoing consideration by the district. And I feel that this has been forgotten. I also feel that what is overlooked is the section of the OCP, which spells out our vision and functions that we see, our goals for our downtown. And that's in section 16.2D. I won't read it out, but there's 7 considerations here. What is the downtown for? Who is it for? It's community-wide functions for people of Brackendale, for example, and its regional functions for the people of Whistler and Pemberton, for example. Who is a downtown for affects downtown parking demand. And I feel that the outcome of these, and maybe we're going to change when we rewrite our OCP, but today the downtown isn't just for neighborhood residents who can walk to what they need to access. So that we are overlooking in our planning for the downtown the need for off-street parking facilities. And here is an example of where we can take advantage of an opportunity to put some dollars into that fund. And I feel that this should be argued and addressed and debated every single time, not least in this neighborhood where very recently we've had substantial discussion about the lack of parking on the part of businesses, residents, and large community facilities next door. So these are the reasons that I won't be supporting the staff recommendation as presented. Thank you.
Thank you. Any additional comments? Councillor Pettingill.
Yeah, happy to support this. I think the variances are small. Just for the benefit of my colleague, who I know has been away for a little while, my understanding is next week we have a public hearing. I haven't seen the report yet. Last time we saw this, it involved a multi-story parking structure downtown. I haven't heard that has changed. And so that would be if that is supported, that would be a significant amount of public amenity that could have been put to other uses that may be dedicated to this use. And so I think, in this context, I don't know if that changes your perspective, but I don't think holistically parkades have been excluded from consideration.
Other comments? Councillor Stoner, and I'd just like to welcome back Councillor Greenlaw. But I'll go to you, Councillor Stoner, then Hamilton.
Yeah, thank you through the chair. I will be supporting the motion on the floor. I think the variances requested at this time are proportional and reasonable and well articulated. The only variance that is being requested for clarity is a change of the drive aisle and the single access drive aisle to the parkade. as well as the minimum length for 5 parking stalls. So there's no parking variance being requested at this time for the development permit. I think that with regards to the drive aisle, I think that that is a creative and functional solution for a small lot downtown that is very constrained, and ensures that this development is providing the number of parking stalls that it has been expected to provide as per the zoning bylaw. And the minimum length space for the 5 stalls, I think we'll leave it to the developer to sort out how they assign those through sale of the units, but hopefully that is well managed, and I am sure that there's many folks who drive vehicles that'll fit those 5 stalls, no problem. With regards to my council colleagues, long discussion around where the cash in lieu goes with regards to the 210,000 currently being directed to the Alternative Forms of Transportation Reserve Fund. I will support the motion on the floor that that's where that funding goes to. I'm open to a further conversation about a downtown parkade. The last report that we had, the ISL one that you referred to, Councillor Anderson, did show that I can't remember what year it was that was done, but that was a minimum of a $10 million cost for a 200 space parkade on a piece of property that we probably don't own. And so I think what we've actually talked about is not to dismiss the need for parking infrastructure downtown, is actually to try and encourage creative partnerships like those that that Councillor Pettingill spoke to around the Bailey Street development and other things like that, because we have limited resources and ability to deliver that on our own with the number of needs that are at top priority. And so I support putting the cash in lieu towards the alternative forms of transportation, because that is money that can be moved to improve our community in the short term and see immediate benefit to our community downtown, as opposed to holding it in a reserve for a strategy that we don't have a clear roadmap for. Thanks.
Thank you for that. Any other comments on this, Councillor Hamilton? I'll come back around after my comments, Councillor Anderson.
Okay. Yeah, thanks very much. Support the motion on the floor regarding the one-way drive aisle. I think that's a very sensible solution for this space. That's I don't see many conflicts arising, and even if they do, it's as staff says, staff have said it's on a laneway, so that's positive. Regarding the length, minimum length of the stalls, this will be a choice for the person who purchases the unit, whether they want to purchase a shorter stall or not. That's up to them, and presumably the units with the shorter stalls might cost less, but that's not our business. So I'm supportive of that option for folks. And speaking to parking strategy more generally, let's say the cash in lieu of commercial parking stalls, I think that the parking strategy that the system of parking, how we think about parking within our community, the method of requiring massive amounts of parking for every single commercial and residential unit, it simply can't, our downtown cannot accommodate that level of parking. And so we're going to need to be starting to have folks make choices about whether they have parking or don't have parking. And if they don't have parking, presumably a unit will cost less. A commercial unit without a parking stall should cost less than a commercial unit with a parking stall. And those are economic choices that our business and residential community should be allowed to make. So thanks.
Thank you. I'm going to, I'll venture some comments first. Is the variances here are really the decision for council, and I find both of them to be quite reasonable. that minimum width, that 3.65 meter width for the drive aisle for one way is a standard width we hear for a drive aisle. And given that it isn't something that's publicly accessible and it does come out onto an alley and the end of an alley, I think the impacts to anyone but a resident are non-existent. So I'm happy to support that. The length piece feels very reasonable. It did, when I started reading through the documentation, I was skeptical of this particular piece, thinking that like common compact car, what is that? I'm thinking, we see smart cars, we see small Fiats, we see a lot of these smaller Cooper mini trucks from Japan, all sorts of tiny things. And the fact that what we're basing this on and we're calling a compact car in the Squamish context is a Jeep Cherokee, a Nissan Rogue, a Hyundai Tucson, or a Ford Escape, which I don't think are compact cars. These are very average size vehicles in my mind, tells me that this will be very functional. Decision at this table, we don't dictate whether these spots are tied to even included in the purchase price of a unit. It's up to, that's not something that we have insight into, but I am comfortable that what is here and what is proposed here makes good sense and will be functional for folks that are living in the building. So I'm supportive of this and of the staff recommendation. Now, in response to conversation I've heard here at the table, I would like to move that we sever this motion into two pieces. The first piece would be 1, 2, and 4, and then the second piece would be item 3. I'll speak to it if it's seconded. Councillor Hamilton seconds. I think it's critical that we at this table voice our concerns about pieces that we do and don't like about projects and what it would take to secure support for the project or for any initiative. In this case, the proponents meeting I think it's important that we address this commercial parking stall piece separately and where that funding goes. I'm not going to go so far as to propose an amendment to item 3, but I do think that when a proponent meets the spirit of or even the requirements of our regulations, and the objection is where those funds go, I think it's worthwhile to break that piece off to see how much of this we can agree on and which pieces we're just not going to be able to resolve, and we need to constructively disagree and move on. So I think this is best if we sever it for those reasons. If there's anyone else that would like to make comment on this motion to sever, this is the motion to sever. I'm going to go to the seconder and I'll come to you, Councillor Pettingill. So
Well, point of order, actually.
You try it. Yep.
Procedurally, my recollection, I was just trying to find it in the procedures bylaw, is that there's no motion to sever. It's just, it gets severed.
I was having a bit of a sidebar while this was going on to make sure that we're on side, but it's great to seek clarity there. So I'll go to our corporate officer.
Melissa Boblito, corporate officer. Great point. It's section 9.21, and it's no motion is required to consider clauses separately unless the requesting council member or some other council member requests that the clauses be considered in a different order than that in which they were originally presented.
So because it's, I know, awkward, but so I'll go to Councillor French for comments on the motion to sever.
I'm speaking in favor, and thank you, because I think what this does is it allows a council member to generally and broadly support the project while registering an opposition to one small piece of it.
Thank you. Any other comments on this? Seeing none, again, this is on the motion to sever as described. I'll call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? Councillor Pettingill opposes, motion carries. So now we're back to the motion that's severed. We are, I will leave I've said my piece on the bulk of this. Is there anybody who has additional comment on items 1, 2, and 4? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? Councillor Greenlaw opposes. Motion carries. So now we're on to item 3. And because we severed this, I'll go back around for invite another round of comments specifically on item 3. Who would like to get us started? Councillor French?
Thanks, Mayor Herford. In my original comments, I used the phrase parking variance. I misspoke. The phrase, thank you, Councillor Stoner, that I should have used was the commercial parking stall buyout. So I make that correction for the record.
Yeah, thank you very much. Councillor Anderson, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Herford. I very much appreciate your initiative here. I would qualify, though, that my goal is not really to register my concern, but to prompt discussion and deliberation. I would prefer that more often that staff reports present the options as to the fate of the fee in lieu cash as options for council discussion, as we are in practice doing at the present time. Comments on some points raised by my colleagues. The Bailey Street proposal that we'll be addressing in the near future, that has never been discussed as in the context of solutions for downtown parking, to my knowledge. It's been has not been addressed in that context explicitly. The issue of the cost of these facilities, let's talk business plan scenarios, not only for the construction, but for operations. There's various potential business plans. So I don't think that it's so easy to dismiss on the basis of costs, and including out of that report that we had written in 2019, discussed in 2020. Partnership scenarios have been referred to by Councillor Stoner, very important. And there's all kinds of partnership scenarios, and some of the advocates for parking facilities have come forward with interesting ideas, which perhaps should have a hearing. We have properties, again, scenarios. Where could these be located? And we may take the opportunity to rethink the design and the functions of parking facilities, which is happening elsewhere. In Europe, parkades are now called mobility hubs because they incorporate new ideas as to their function. They're also designed to be repurposed when we don't need them anymore. So these are my considerations as I, just to explain, my goal is to more often prompt discussion and deliberation on our part on this ongoing issue and concerns for within the downtown and elsewhere. That we keep spinning wheels as far as, well, maybe not spinning wheels isn't the right expression, but it seems to be something where we're not making any headway on addressing community concerns. Thank you very much. I will not be supporting item number 3 as presented.
Thank you. Any additional comments on this piece? Go ahead, Councillor Penningill.
Yeah, I think, when I talk to people about parking and you drill down, it really comes down to a question of parking availability and not number of spots. Availability is supply on one side, so number of spots on one side, but also demand on the other. We have Bailey Street coming forward, which is downtown. In my mind, it's certainly part of a downtown parking strategy and my thinking. But even still, you have to be thoughtful about how many cars you expect and want to attract in and around. We have to also deal with the demand side. And this is a relatively, compared to what I believe is going to be coming from Bailey, a pretty small piece towards the supply side. And so like my colleague Councillor Stoner mentioned, it is money that we can, demand side, it's money that we can put to action quickly on the demand side. The supply side, the next big development aims to deal with that. And so I think the staff recommendation makes a lot of sense.
Thank you. Any other comments on this? I think this is the question at hand. Item 3 that we have left is where the cash in lieu goes. The cash in lieu calculation is is something that we regulate. They've met that threshold as a proponent. So for us, this really is a discussion for us as to which reserve fund it goes into. I've heard from one councillor that the reserve fund isn't appropriate. I've done my best to facilitate a discussion here about what could be appropriate and open the door for an amendment, an alternative course of action. I think this is the right path forward for us to making a meaningful dent in the on the parking structure funding. This is not that. We've seen incremental investments over time in our active transportation and our alternative forms of transportation. I think that's a totally reasonable place to put these funds. So I'm happy to support it. I do think that does not mean that I think that the overall discussion around downtown parking is closed. I think that that report from pre-COVID times, as Councillor Stoner mentioned, I can't remember the exact time, but I know that there's been substantive movement on the pricing side, at least since then. Is something that and discussions around parking structures is something that's highlighted in our recent transportation master plan, and so it is something that is still highlighted as an area of work. I don't think that, but at this point in time, this is the right place for this $210,000 contribution, in my opinion. So with that, I will call the question. All in favor? And opposed? Councillor Anderson, Councillor Greenlaw oppose. Motion carries. Thank you very much. Council, I think we've been at this for a while. I would like to do the consent agenda, and then we'll take a break. So is there anyone that would like to pull anything from the consent agenda? I had Councillor Greenlaw, go ahead.
I'd like to pull item 4, the downtown Squamish BIA RE opposition to the proposed PST, please.
Perfect. Happy to do that. We'll deal with that at the appropriate place. Is there anyone that would like to pull anything else from the consent agenda? Seeing none, is there someone ready to move the remains of the consent agenda? Moved by Councillor Hamilton, second by Councillor French. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. So we will deal with the piece of correspondence that was pulled in the appropriate time on the agenda. But for right now, we'll take a 10-minute recess, and we'll reconvene make it a 12-minute recess. We'll reconvene at 10 minutes after 8 o'clock. Thank you. Right, welcome back. We're on item 7A1. District of Squamish 2026 to 2035 10-year financial plan, bylaw number 3213-2025, which is the spring amendment, bylaw number 3228-2026. And I will turn it over to staff to introduce themselves and take us through the presentation. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Laura Turner, Director of Financial Planning and Reporting, and I'm joined by Heather Boxer, General Manager of Finance, Procurement, and IT. We are here with you today to bring forward 3 readings of the 2026 to 2035 Financial Plan Bylaw Spring Amendment. A Financial Plan Bylaw Amendment is focused on changes impacting projects that will commence in the current year, or 2026, whereas changes related to future years will be included in the following financial plan cycle. In this case, they'll be included in the 2027 to 2036 financial plan. On an annual basis, during Q1, staff review the current financial plan and recommend amendments to address operating or project budget changes. For operating budgets, amendments may be required to reflect changes due to inflationary cost increases, labor contract changes, or changes to revenue and expense forecasts. And amendments to special operating or capital projects are typically due to change in funding availability, cost escalation, or changes to project scope. Based on review of the 26 to 35 financial plan and current operations, staff are recommending amendment to the district's operating budget to increase the financial operations budget for the reestablishment of the Senior Financial Services Specialist position. If endorsed, this position will strengthen financial oversight, improve organizational resilience, and support sustainable growth. This position has been classified in pay band 7 with a 2026 annual salary and benefits cost of $170,000. In order for this position to start mid-year, staff recommend this position be added to the financial plan in 2026 and be funded by the operating support provision. This amendment would have no tax impact in 2026. Based on direction previously received by Council, 2 amendments are recommended for the district's special operating and capital projects. First, at the special business meeting on April 7th, Council endorsed an increase to the cricket pitch project budget of $98,000, with $18,500 externally funded from the Squamish Cricket Club. Amendment is recommended to reflect a revised 2026 project budget of $140,000. As $18,500 funded externally and $121,500 funded from CACs. And second, at the special business meeting on December 9th, Council allocated $100,000 of CACs from the Neighborhood Park Planning Project to a Ravenswood Neighborhood Park project. This project was classified in the 2026 to 35 financial plan as a special operating project. However, due to the capital nature of work being completed, an amendment is recommended to reclassify expenses from operating to capital. Total cost for this project remains at $100,000 in 2026 and will be funded by CACs. These amendments also have no impact on the 2026 tax requirement. A key challenge identified during the development of the 2026 to 35 financial plan is the limited availability of long-term funding sources, including limited reserve funds. Therefore, staff recommend an increased transfer to each of the district's 4 capital reserves, prorated in accordance with the asset management reserve funding strategy, which will assist in addressing capital projects already identified in the various master plans. Staff recommended amendment to the financial plan bylaw will reallocate contributions from provisions, increase general taxation revenue, and transfer $7.2 million to the district's capital reserves, broken down as $2.2 million to general capital, $3.1 million to wastewater capital, $1.7 million to water capital, and $200,000 to the solid waste capital. The 2026 to 35 financial plan bylaw has been revised for the changes recommended in the presentation and is in front of you today for 3 readings. Once the bylaw has been adopted, the next steps include submission to the province and approval of the 2026 tax rate bylaw. And that concludes our presentation, so I'll turn it back to Mayor and Council for discussion.
Thank you very much. And do you mind just taking down the screen? We have a couple online participants and I can't always see them when that's up, but questions. Let's start with questions. Councillor Stoner, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you through the chair. I'm just wondering if staff can clarify, I don't think, what is the operating support provision and how much money is in it and where does it live?
Through the chair. So the operating support provision was created with the intent to fund new support positions that are brought on to support sort of general operations as well. And what we do is for new positions, we would we contribute about 10% of their new salary into the provision. And then that can be used to fund those new positions. And there's currently a balance of about 200,000 in there that's unallocated.
And when did we start doing that? This is the first time I think I've heard of the operational support provision, just out of curiosity.
Through the chair, it was about 2023 when we started doing it, so it's relatively new.
Okay, are you good for questions at this point, Councillor Stoner? Okay, anyone else have questions for staff? What we've seen here? I'm not seeing any. I would say that we are at the point of a motion. Councillor Hamilton, are you moving the staff recommendation? Yeah, is there a seconder for the recommendation? I'll second it. Would you like to speak to it, Councillor Hamilton?
Yeah, thanks very much. Yeah, thanks for putting together the spring amendment. One of the costs of having our budget finished in December is that you get the pleasure of putting together a spring amendment, which I think is a good system. I think it works well, and I think that most of the items that we see here, the cricket pitch, and I'm forgetting the other one right off the top of my head, that were from council resolution, obviously make good sense. The staff position towards financial services, shifting that forward slightly makes good sense as well in my mind. And regarding the allocation of funds to reserve, I think that makes a good distribution to satisfy the capital needs of our community. Thanks.
Thank you. Other comments on this? Go ahead, Councillor Pettingill.
Yeah, happy to support this. I know very glad to have a 10-year financial plan, and I think we've said that, but having that sort of comfort that we know much more clearly where we're going is important. I appreciate I think I'm going to say it, even though it's been said many times. We know the rec center has been a focus of conversation. We have moved aggressively over the last few years to get critical infrastructure like fire halls and public works. I'm not going to quite say out of the way, but get those completed so that we can move as quick as we can on a rec center. And so when we say capital and we say contributions to reserves, that means the funds that would pay for something like a rec center. And so I'm glad to see that we were able to make some extra progress on those reserve contributions, because we know that the needs in this area are high. So we've moved, we've pushed really hard to do this. There's a ways to go, and I'm glad to see that the focus on reserve contributions, I would say.
Thank you. Any other comments? Councillor Stoner, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks through the chair. I will support the motion on the floor. I'm a little bit challenged by the service level change increase midway through the year. It's not our typical practice to do so, so that we can have a more fulsome view to the potential needs for staffing level changes through the budget process. I do think that being able to smooth it in with the operating support provision is helpful through this year. And it is an important piece of a core part of our organization in order to be able to ensure that our financial services are well maintained, to be able to address legislative requirements and ongoing expectations of our community in order to do good financial planning. So I will support that despite a few hesitations. With regards to the other elements in the spring amendment, I think that these have either been previously discussed in the case of the cricket pitch and I am also forgetting the other one. That's not ideal.
Ravenswood Park.
The Ravenswood, that's just a reallocation, which I think is reasonable from a budgeting perspective. I think the biggest piece here is increasing the amount of money that's going into our asset management reserve strategy. And I think that this is a really good practice. We know that when we adopted the asset management reserve funding strategy back in 2023, it was a sound approach forward, but it still resulted in a gap with regards to the amount of capital investment that was required across all of our capital plans. And so allocating this additional money to those reserves is a really important move that we can make to be able to ensure that we can continue to deliver the level of service and the growing level of service that our community is expecting of us. So I'll support the motion on the floor. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other comments? Speaking in support of the motion, I think I'll speak to a few pieces of this puzzle. The Ravenwood Park, that change was something that was really directed by council, and I understand that from where we started to where we landed with how those funds will be allocated or brought to bear makes good sense that they be reclassified, recategorized here. The service level change, I think I'm happy that there's not an impact to 2026 taxation, as we did have a lot of in-depth conversation about what that and some hard choices through the budgeting process. However, it will hit. I want to make sure that everyone understands that will be operationalized in 2027, which means the tax impact of this decision that we're making here today will be felt in 2027. That said, I support the addition. I think that as our organization continues to grow and gets more and more complex, and that having the appropriate staffing level in all of our departments, and particularly the finance is incredibly important, so we can meet all of our legislative requirements, as well as basic operational things, and the sort of heightened level of reporting that our community that we've been able to set that expectation for in our community, and so we'll be able to continue to meet that. I think reflecting on the transfer to reserves, I think this is a really critical piece of work. I know the reasons why, but at the end of the day, there has been a historical underinvestment in our assets as a community, and those have been well documented. We've brought out a strategy. We're working really hard to address it, and this is I think, in supporting this, I really believe that this is one of the ways that this council is showing the spirit of planting the tree we will not sit in the shade of. This is to benefit of future members of the community, future councils that will be sitting, hopefully not at this exact table, but in these roles in future, won't have to grapple with the situation that we have on our hands now with a strong funding source to address asset replacement over time. So I'm not only happy to make that contribution, I'm quite proud of our willingness to take that on as a council, because we are in a society of those short-term wins being celebrated often at the expense of long-term planning. So I'm happy to have this sizable contribution to our asset management be part of our 10-year financial plan. Both of those things are incredibly important and the right thing to do at this point in time. So I'll call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much. So our next item, flowing on from that, item 7A2, District of Squamish 2026 Property Tax Rate Bylaw. Go ahead, the floor is yours.
Great, thanks. Good evening again. My name is Laura Turner, Director of Financial Planning and Reporting, and I'm joined by Heather Boxford, General Manager of Finance, Procurement, and IT. We are here with you today to bring forward 3 readings of the 2026 Tax Rate Bylaw. Okay, apologies about that. Okay, BC Assessment has completed property assessments for the 2026 tax year and provided to the district as part of the revised roll. Presented here is the year-over-year change in assessment by class, which includes an increase of 2.39% due to non-market change and 0.71% due to market changes. It's important to note that the 3.09% total change over 2025 represents the increase in property assessed values, not taxation revenue, as revenue is calculated as assessment times the approved property tax rate. There are 2 key steps to set tax rates for 2026 after receiving the property assessments. First, determine the annual tax revenue requirement, which is approved in the 2026 to 2035 Financial Plan Bylaw. And second, determine tax revenue distribution between property classes as described in the property tax policy. Summarized here are the proposed 2026 tax rates and the resulting municipal tax revenue by property class. Noting that the total tax revenue required for 2026 is $61.9 million as per the 2026 to 35 Financial Plan Bylaw Spring Amendment. Illustrated on this slide are the tax impacts to the average residential and business folios based on the proposed 2026 tax rates. As noted on this slide, the municipal tax requirement for the average residential property is approximately $3,294, which is a $320 or 10.8% increase over 2025. It's important to note that average assessment is calculated by taking the total property class assessment divided by the number of properties within the class, or folio count. The purpose is just to illustrate an example of the increase in property tax an owner may experience within each class. However, individual tax is based on individual property assessed values. And that concludes our brief presentations. I'll turn it back to the Mayor and Council for discussion.
Thank you. And again, if you don't mind taking down the screen just to aid with visibility, thank you. I lost my voice for a second there, but I found it again. So any questions, Council? I know this is a matter we've engaged with a little bit today already. Any questions, or if we're ready for a motion, I would entertain that as well. Are we ready for a motion? Councillor Anderson, go ahead.
Yes, I do have a question for staff. A section of this report I look forward to each year is the community comparatives table. It is on page 7, near the end of the report. Municipal tax per average household, that is the residential tax burden for Squamish relative to other communities. And my question is, because I think this is an important one, and I may come back later and offer reasons why I think so, but are there options for how we present this information? That is, I do think that this is a reasonable variety of communities that staff are suggesting we should look to for comparison. But are there other types of presentations of this, in my view, important information that could be considered? More communities or what have you? Is it easy to assemble? Is there a ready database that we could refer to for further information around this issue of community comparatives, for example? Thank you.
Just not exclusively to buy staff some time to contemplate that, but just to orient everyone. We're talking about those comments are relation to a table on page 300 of 374 of our agenda, or page 7 of 8 of the specific report, just to orient council. But I hope I've bought you enough time, staff, to reply.
Through the mayor, great question. So there is a centralized database on the province of BC website, and there's comparatives for all the provincial municipalities there. So we did select these ones just as comparatives, but there's many different ways we could present the information. And if there's something specific that you'd like to see, then we're happy to put that together.
Thank you. I might suggest that I may not be alone among my colleagues, that perhaps a link we could pass on later to that particular provincial website page. That might be handy. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I also enjoy that table, Councillor Anderson. It's excellent to understand, and is often a piece of information we don't have by going so early with our budgeting process. So it's great to look at it at this point in time. Any other comments? Otherwise, I believe we're ready for a motion. I think we're ready for a motion. Would someone like to move the recommendation or an alternative to? Are you moving the recommendation, Councillor Anderson? Thank you. Is there a seconder for the motion? Second by Councillor Hamilton. Go ahead. Go ahead, Councillor Anderson.
Thank you. I may take the opportunity to elaborate on my particular interest in this table of community comparatives, that is the residential tax burden. I think we might ask, in looking at this table, is this where Squamish we want to be? We are compared with a number of communities which do have a better balance of industrial tax base, including heavy industry, which we do not have at this time. We also see comparisons with communities which are, for the most part, residential. And for example, West Vancouver, Lions Bay, Port Moody, White Rock, predominantly residential commuter type communities. Is this what we want to be, is my question. We also see comparisons to North Vancouver District and North Vancouver City. I'm surprised how close we are to them, since they do have substantial waterfront industrial players in both those municipalities. So I suggest that it should prompt us to consider tax-based strategy, because I do suggest this is not where we want to be. We want to have relief for our residential taxpayers with a more balanced tax base. And this means we should be looking through applying this lens to our economic development strategy, which was discussed a couple of weeks ago in council. We have among our economic sectors local heavy lifters that are heavy lifters for our tax base and in other respects too. And I'm suggesting generally to my colleagues and to our audience here that we should be careful to give attention to those core and enabling sectors that are heavy lifters, the land and infrastructure they need, so that we can retain these sectors and see that they can prosper and contribute to our tax base more than they are today. So I think we should apply a tax-based lens in deliberating and giving direction to our economic development strategy, perhaps more than we do today. Thank you very much.
Thank you for those comments. I'll go to the seconder. Councillor Hamilton, any comments around the table? Go ahead, Councillor Penningill.
Yeah, sort of take the bait on my colleague, and I have most years I do take a look at, I think it's Open Data BC. I end up with the charts, historical charts for BC, and then I go on to Canada and look at the rates, and you can compare absolute taxation or taxation relative to assessment and how that has changed. I would observe that as the price of land and housing has gone up. Everything has gone up in Squamish, including cost of us doing business. I feel like we have been very aggressive on dealing with infrastructure shortfalls, and I think that's partially reflected too in where we at. Just an observation as we're sort of comparing to other communities, I have observed typically across Canada, BC is much more reliant on business and to offset residential taxation, where many other places in Canada, there's sort of a more even distribution across residential and business. So if you look in many other places, I think Ontario, when I've looked, residential taxation is much higher than it is here, and business taxation tends to be lower. So definitely worth digging into. Careful what you wish for, because lowering the business and supporting that typically comes at the raising of the residential. So future discussions to be had, and there is great information on the Government of Canada and BC open data websites.
Thank you. Any other comments? Just happy to see this move forward. I'm going to take the bait on this graph that I do like seeing every year, but I'm also left, like any good infograph, with it triggers 1,000 other questions about each of these pieces and what else is happening there and what the unique context is. But I do think it's a fair, for its limitations, I do think it's an important piece of context as we do our work. But this is really the last piece of the puzzle of our implementing our financial plan. So happy to see this, to get this this last piece over the line. And with that, I'll call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you so much. So our next order of business is land development procedures and subdivision and development control bylaw updates. What's that, sir? Okay, and Councillor Stoner is going to drop off the meeting. Thank you very much for your work today and always. And just as to buy staff some time to get set up, and just a reminder for council, that does leave us with an even number of elected officials at the table. So if we do get to the point there's a tie vote, it is a fail. So we just need to be an extra piece to be aware of as we work our way through the remainder of the agenda. The floor is yours. Take it away.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Philip Gibbons, planner with Community Development, and I have Asia Phil, Acting Manager of Current Planning, with me today, and be presenting on proposed updates to the land development procedures and subdivision development control bylaw. So some background, there's been many legislative and policy changes implemented related to increasing housing supply over the last 5 years. As staff have been working with the new legislation, bylaws and policy, we have been adapting over time and proposing incremental updates to Council for consideration. And Council provided feedback on staff's proposed updates at the February and March 10th Committee of the Whole meetings, and these bylaws presented today for readings represent changes which were generally supported by Council at those meetings. The first of the proposed updates is to the development permit delegation criteria. That is to increase the delegation of former character development permits for residential applications from 20 to 50 units, and to remove the delegation cap on commercial and industrial uses, which is currently 400 square meters. These proposed changes will allow more small, medium-sized projects to be delegated and may encourage additional employment space. Larger applications and those with variances will still be brought forward to Council for decision. Secondly, the district currently holds hearings for non-delegated development variance permit and temporary use permit applications. These hearings are not legislated or formalized in district bylaws or policy. Updates based on the feedback from the March 10th Committee of the Whole meeting was to no longer hold hearings for development variance permits and to only hold hearings for temporary use permits where directed by council. This would be when the permit is presented to council for consideration. Notice to the public would still be provided in accordance with legislation, and written comments would still be received and attached to the report to council when applications are brought forward for a decision. And the last item is the proposed bylaws amend both the Land Development Procedures Bylaw and the Subdivision Development Control Bylaw to allow on-demand surety bonds to be accepted for development permits and servicing agreements. And then, if given readings, staff will bring the bylaw amendments back to council for adoption at the next meeting. And outcomes from other recommendations from the March 10th, 2026 Committee of the Whole meeting will be brought forward at a later meeting for council consideration. And finally, the recommendation is that the proposed bylaws to amend the Land Development Procedures Bylaw and Subdivision Development Control Bylaw to be given 3 readings. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the presentation. If you don't mind taking down the presentation just to help with online participants. Council, questions about what we've heard? I know we've engaged with this relatively recently at a Committee of the Whole meeting. Councillor Anderson, go ahead.
Mr. Gibbons, as you've just mentioned, some of the recommendations from our Committee of the Whole meeting where we discussed this topic on March 10th, you state in the report, or the report states that they will require additional staff work and will be brought forward at a later date. One of those topics I recall that we touched on was how the new hillside roads or new hillside road standards might be incorporated into this bylaw. Could you give an idea of what other topics are still out there hanging that you might be able to identify for us? Will they come forward in another package, consolidated package of the remaining topics, or is that the approach you will be taking for tidying up the bylaw with a further presentation?
Through the chair, as a clarification, hillside standards were not part of the work that I was specifically undertaking here. One of the items discussed was how we receive information from the community on rezoning applications. And the other work, the recommendation was working on how we engage with the community on all types of development applications and work on improving the website to display information on development applications.
I see. That's helpful. That's not what I expected. So that is then more on process matters relating to administering the bylaw that we're going to be expecting in future.
Sure, that is correct.
Thank you.
Thank you. Other questions? Seeing none, we do have the recommendation before us. If we're ready for that, Council, I'd entertain a motion. Are you moving? And that'd be both that. Yep. Okay. Is there a seconder for the motion? Second by Councillor French. Would you like to speak to it, Councillor Anderson?
I think, Mayor Herford, I probably don't have too much more to say other than to observe that it might be a bit of an important topic for public awareness and education as to the role of the subdivision and development control bylaw. Made this observation earlier on aspects of our financial planning, but this is another area that it may be somewhat clouded in mystery for members of the public, the role that this bylaw has. And so to the extent that we might have a web page around this specific project, I think that that would be a useful initiative and something that we can direct people to. The relevance and where it comes into play, this bylaw for the public comes up not so infrequently. I'll just make that observation that its importance might be better awareness of its importance and role might be, we might make efforts to foster that. Thank you.
Thank you. Other comments on this? Go ahead, Councillor Pettingill.
I'm going to try and leverage something I had clarified on process earlier tonight and request that these two items be severed in their current order. So I think it's a request as opposed to a motion.
Yeah, that's fine. Would you like to speak to the first? We'll consider them severed, and we'll do a round. This can be limited to the first part, and then we'll treat them that way. So go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. And I cannot support the changes as proposed. I want to be cautious not to conflate the issues because there are some important differences. But earlier tonight, we had some unscheduled public attendance about Hearth and Hearth, and there are some decisions, and the province essentially is determined who has what decisions. There are some decisions for council and some for the province, and we may not like our piece. But I think what we heard from the community is, in that case, where there is council decision, wanting some ability to have feedback and council consideration into that process. Now, here, these particular things in this bylaw wouldn't have any impact on that actual issue because these are DPs, development permits, development varying permits, and that's not what's at issue with Hearth and Hearth. However, for me, the principle, and I think I spoke about it before, is there have been, and I think there's been good intent to get housing moving, but the province has in certain times, and we talked about it earlier, removed our ability to have public hearings. It's not even our choice. In some cases, we can't even have one. And in my experience with the development permit applications, there are places where I feel they are still not quite objective enough from my perspective. And so with the sort of, I think, public feeling like some ability to have input in decisions being pulled away in cases, and my discomfort where we are in terms of where I see is the line between objective and subjective development permit guidelines, I feel like we're going a bit too fast with this delegation here. I'm not as concerned with the development variance permit piece, so it's really mostly focused on the development permit piece. While I'm on this, I would like to say, just highlight, we have retained the ability to decide whether or not there would be a hearing on temporary use permits. And that is something that we are retaining, that we have had, and we are retained. I would just like to flag, it is really important, especially as there may be a new council coming in, just request that council make sure that people are really clear. And when we've made these sorts of changes, staff has done a good job of making sure that council is clear on their ability to make that decision at that point, and just sort of request that continues. With those comments, I'm not quite there yet on this, but thank you.
Thank you. Other comments on the first that? Just to be clear, we've severed these two now. So any comments on the first that? I will venture some comments of my own. I think that I understand the sort of the desire to retain or provide what is an appropriate venue for communities to engage with a subject and have their voices heard. I think that I think you take the bait and compare what happened, what we heard today. We heard a desire for public hearing on a specific issue, and then the exact next piece on the agenda was a public hearing on an issue, and it was like someone pulled the fire alarm as far as the exit goes. And reflecting on the number of development variance permits that we've entertained in this room over my time as an elected official, which is rapidly approaching the 8-year mark, it has been extremely limited. So I think that this change is appropriate because it's very specific to a very nuanced piece of our work, which is a development variance permit. The retaining of the ability to have a public hearing for a TUP, I think, is important. And I do think that the delegation piece is important, that we continue to assess over time as we grow, and larger and busier communities than us have even a higher level of delegation. So it is really about striking a balance. And I do think that what we have here is very thoughtful, and I do think strikes a reasonable balance. I hear my colleagues' concern for that, ensuring that the voices of the community are heard, but I do think that these changes make good sense, and also come with a desire for increasing ways to hear from the public, but that specific mechanism on those very specific development variance permits are make sense to me, and I'm happy to see this move forward. Any other comments on item 1? Seeing none, I'll call. Okay. Last one to you, and then I need to call a question.
I just want to clarify, and it's like development variance permit, development permit. It's really confusing for people, and so I'm trying to recognize. And we talked about public hearings, and those are being retained. We're not actually making a change in terms of public hearings with this. And I just want to make clear my concern, and I really generally support more delegation. I think it is a path to efficiency. Just to be clear, the key stumbling block for me is that when we delegate, I want to make sure our criteria, because it means that it's not just that there's no hearing, it's that even council doesn't get a say. We are delegating it to staff to make that decision. And so we are taking away our own right to make that decision, which I think makes sense if the criteria is clear enough. And I just don't quite have enough comfort with the criteria you've articulated. And so that's my stumbling block with this stuff.
Thank you for the clarification. With that, I'll call the question. All in favor? And opposed? Councillor Greenlaw Pettingill opposed. Motion carries. Thank you. Now we're on to the second that. Any comments specific to this? I really see this as maybe a step above administrative, but really just providing another option to the community when they need to provide some form of secured funds. And this makes complete sense to me that we offer all the choices that continue to provide protection and assurance to the district that the funds will be paid, and this does that. So I'm happy to see this piece move forward and provide yet another option. So I will call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? Councillor Greenlaw, was that an oppose, or I'm not sure if I'm getting a lag? No, you're good. Okay. So motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Council. We're now on to adoptions. As is our practice, we don't have presentations for these. So we just, these have been previously provided readings and are now at the point where all the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed, and it's ready for adoption. So the first one is zoning bylaw number 2200-2011 amendment bylaw for CD 82 rental housing. Moved by Councillor French, second by Councillor Hamilton. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. So next is District of Squamish 2026-2035 10-year financial plan bylaw number 3213 2025 amendment bylaw, which is the carry forward. I will move that if there's a seconder. Second by Councillor French. I'll call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. And then next we have the District of Squamish fees and charges bylaw, number 3185 2025, and its amendment bylaw number 3225 2026. I will also move that. Second by Councillor Hamilton. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. So we have nothing under item 8 or 9 or 10. We're on to items referred from the consent agenda. We didn't have any minutes referred, but we did have something under 11B, which was Councillor Greenlaw pulled the the letter that was under item 6B4 originally from the Downtown Squamish BIA regarding opposition to the proposed PST expansion and its impact to small businesses in Squamish. And I will turn it over to Councillor Greenlaw. Would you like to speak to it?
Yeah, I'd like to just propose a motion that we write a letter of support and address it to the same recipients that Ms. Neal did in her letter, and I'll speak to it if seconded.
I'll second that. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I think you've all heard me talk about this, the PST adjustments, and I think Ms. Neal makes quite a few good points. I'm very concerned that the introduction of PST to professional services will increase the cost of living for all British Columbians. It will increase the cost of housing, increase the cost of all of our commodities. But in this particular, for this particular letter, the concern is around our small businesses and the impacts that they'll experience. And as you all know, small businesses operate on such slim margins, and they have such predacious loans in so many, or such predacious leases in so many instances, that really our small businesses need all the help they can get. They're the backbones of our community, and they're crucially important to our economies. So I think it's really important that we support this message. I know that it received royal ascension on the 16th, but most businesses don't even know about the legislation change, and the advocacy around it is just getting started. So I think it's a really important cause to support.
Thank you. Any other comments on this? Go ahead, Councillor Pettingill.
Yeah, I sort of debated whether or not to pull the LMLGA, Lower Mainland Local Government Association booklet, but knew this was coming and thought I'd just address it here. I believe Abbotsford has a motion coming forward, and just sort of highlight for us, there's concern amongst municipal governments. We rely on a lot of professional services, and so we'll be suddenly paying PST on all these services. So we're going to see some impacts to our municipal budgets, which then often go onto property taxes. So there is a fair bit of concern about this. I could live with this a little more if we weren't seeing a lack of support for housing and encampments and seniors facilities and hospitals and all the things that I was sort of thinking we might see more action on with the government. And so do I dare think that we would start to see this out of that? I don't know. It's really frustrating, not just this alone, but in the context of what else the government is then not doing. So thank you to my colleague for bringing this forward, and it is a little bit frustrating right now.
Thank you. I'm happy to support this. I was contemplating sort of some action around that, the impact to local governments. But as we just heard from Councillor Pettingill, I think there's sort of advocacy underway with that, and we'll grapple with that at the LMLGA conference in a couple of weeks, next week. But I think this is really important, and really articulating how impactful these changes can be. To this particular piece the legislation change, I think is important to highlight. So I'm happy to draft a letter of support for this this piece of advocacy, and this a sales tax of this sort just has a disproportional impact across society, and I understand the fiscal challenges that we're in, and I don't feel that the folks impacted by this and highlighted in the letter are really who we should be squeezing to get the tax dollars that the province needs to advance our all the goals and all the things that the important work that we expect of the province. So I think there's something in here about the juice not being worth the squeeze. I think there's something else that I think there's other avenues that we could squeeze to get some more tax dollars than this particular piece. So I'm happy to provide the letter should this be supported by council. So with that, I'll call the question. All in favor? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. So we didn't. Sorry, that was the only piece we had pulled from the consent agenda. So we don't have any business arising from the minutes. I don't believe we have any notice of motion, council. We go into open question period. If there's anyone in the audience that has a question of clarification related to agenda items discussed today, now would be your opportunity to ask the question. Seeing no takers on that, we will move on to council or staff announcements. Who'd like to get us started with council or staff announcements? Councillor Pettingill, go ahead.
Sure, I'll take the bait. So a couple of really, I think the past 2 weekends, House and Performing Arts had Night at the Movies, where it was just a bunch of different folks doing covers of famous songs from all kinds of eras in the movies, and just a packed house and great music, just a really fun event. And then the following week, the Sea to Sky Singers did a performance of Take Flight and a bunch of songs that I wasn't so familiar with. I think there was 55 people in the choir, so it was at the Anglican Church behind London Drugs there. And at a couple times, the whole choir, instead of standing up at the front, was around the outside wall of the whole big room. And so you just heard singing from all sides, and it was just really quite an amazing experience. And so, yeah, I've said it a few times, but the arts are really exploding in Squamish in a good way. And, you know, I love my music especially. And so it's some really great stuff in that respect. I sort of, I guess, have to remain nameless, but I went to an event to celebrate a community that has gotten together around a business, but around a not-profit, celebrating a lot of history and rebirth, and just especially in some tough conversations we're having in the last week or so. It was really fantastic to see all kinds of different people coming together as a community. Yeah, I don't feel comfortable saying where because I do a little bit of part-time work, but it was just really great to see that community spirit. I just want to touch briefly on the conversations earlier this evening, and do take the time to thank everyone who came out. You know, I have been holding back. I feel a little more comfortable speaking now, and regret maybe that I wasn't writing back sooner, but also feel like, to be honest, that it was the right choice, but now feel like some of that can begin. And I just really hope, because this is such a fantastic community, that we can find a way through this together. Everyone deserves a place here, and you know, we all make sacrifices for each other, and good work is hard work sometimes, and I think we will find a way through it. And you know, I'm looking forward to see how we do that. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. I've got Councillor Greenlaw next on my list. Go ahead, Councillor.
Yeah, thanks. A couple things I wanted to mention today. One, I went to Brennan Park this weekend and it looks so good. And I was really excited about it. You know, when you see all the sketches and the drawings, it's very far from, you know, you imagine things, but it's not the same as seeing it. So it was really cool to see it. And I just wanted to say thank you to all the people who have been working on there and who are working on there. Our community really appreciates you, and for everybody who's looking for more out of our facilities, this is, you know, another step towards that goal, and it's an important part of getting us there. So I just want to thank everybody for that. And if you haven't seen it, go check it out. It's pretty. It's stunning. It's a gorgeous foyer now. My second piece is this weekend is Squamish Youth Council's Rise Youth Summit, our first potentially annual summit. And please, please, please spread the word. It is designed for youth between the ages of 16 and 22. And youth councils work super hard on it. It's a fantastic lineup of seriously world-class talent. Um, it's free, there's free food, and it's gonna be rad. So tell all the youth in your life. And then the third thing I wanted to mention, I have a fourth too, but the third thing I wanted to mention, I kind of alluded to it a moment ago. I'm still being very active on the PST advocacy piece, both on the textile industry piece and also the adding it to professional services. It has passed Royal Ascension on April 16th, but as I mentioned before, advocacy is just starting. So I am expecting a fair amount of noise from that. And I did want to talk about something more serious. It is Sexual Assault Awareness Month, and I just wanted to dig into that for a minute, but I wanted to leave a bit of a trigger warning here. So if anybody wants to tune out, I'll just let other counselors do their debrief and then I'll come back at the end if that's okay.
Thank you. That sounds like a reasonable approach, albeit slightly ominous, but I thank you for taking that on. Any other comments on council or staff announcements? I have some of my own. I'll venture, and then we'll come back to you, Councillor Greenlaw, to finish off. A lot of moving pieces these days. I think I'm going to pick on two highlights recently. One was April 17th was the How Sound Community Forum, which is an opportunity for local government and not-for-profits working in and around Ukupsum House Sound to come together and share what they've been up to, challenges, victories, and the hosting of that rotates around through the member communities. So on this time around, it was held in Lions Bay in their beautiful event space, which I think is possibly the most picturesque indoor basketball court anyone has ever seen. So if you haven't had an opportunity to check out their facility, do that. But more importantly, it was great to hear from our elected colleagues around the sound, around what they're up to, and maybe it's nice to hear some stories of victory, which is usually what gets shared at these types of things. And you know, all of our governance lines are drawn in such ways that made sense to somebody. But when I think about regional district lines, municipal lines, you know, school districts, health regulation, like all these different things are carved up differently. I really like how this centers us around How Sound. So was able to share some of the work that we're doing with the or endeavoring to do with the Land Back Task Force, which the first presentation of the day was actually from the province and with a representative of Squamish Nation talking about their agreement on joint land use management. So it was great to see sort of what other work has happened and dig into that a little more as that was announced here in Squamish maybe about a year ago. Yeah, a great day out, and some of my colleagues were able to attend as well. I think this is one of my favorite favorite events, honestly, that we get to do in this role. So the other piece is just yesterday. We had was happy to host the CEO of BC Transit and the Vice President of Asset Management. So here in Squamish, and we took the on-demand transit from here at Municipal Hall down to the ocean front, and had a nice meeting over lunch, and hailed the on-demand transit for the return trip as well. And as we were setting out to do that, the CEO, Aaron Pinkerton, said, "Oh, let me just hail the bus." And I was like, "No, I downloaded the app this morning. I don't need any CEO trickery going on of getting the executive level of service. I want to know the new subscriber, the new person just using the app. What does it look like?" And quite intuitive, although it does require its own app. But this is a really innovative way to provide transit service to areas that just at this point in time don't have the user case for a fixed route. So I encourage everyone to look into the on-demand transit. It really applies to Squamish reserve lands, sea and sky, and the downtown, including going from downtown to the oceanfront and vice versa. So it's really worthwhile. I encourage everyone to look into that, and is a really cool addition to our transit offerings. And it has been. We were one of the early adopters of this in British Columbia, with Kelowna area being sort of the first wave. It is something that happened, that it is a concept that that exists in other parts of Canada. But one thing to keep in mind is that for some reason, this piece doesn't show up on Google like route planning. So if you enter in House of Lager, Swakos Park, that kind of thing, and say, "I'd like to get there by transit," it won't come up. So you really need to be proactive. And I encourage everyone in this room to sort of help support that and spread the word, and give it a try. Maybe you walk from downtown to the beach and it feels like it's not too far for your family. And when you get there, you're like, "I think we should take the bus back." That can happen, and it'll be there very quickly. So yeah, it was a great experience. And the conversation with my counterparts at BC Transit was very productive. It's great to get their take on what's happening today and what's happening at the province, and how we get them to step forward with the sustained funding over time that we know transit service deserves, both internal to our system and potentially into the regional transit that we are all pulling for to get across the line. So that's my so that was a great afternoon, and I will be using that on-demand service again. I'll leave my comments there, but I'm happy to go over to Councillor Pettingill.
Yeah, I just want to abuse my privilege and just add one more item. So we got an email that came in that during our meeting, normally every year, I've been several times to this event and seen my colleagues there as well. But on Sunday, April 26th at 11 a.m. at the Workers' Memorial Monument in Junction Park, it is the day of mourning ceremony. The National Day of Mourning honors workers who have died, been injured, or become ill due to workplace hazards, and is recognized in nearly 100 countries. And it's, in my experience, it's a bit of a somber event, but it's also a bit of a celebration of folks that have really been a part of our community for a long time, given a lot to our community, hearing about their families. Some of these tragedies still have impacts in our community today. I think it's really worthwhile to reflect on folks that have literally given it all for our community, but also, what we can learn, and sort of remembering to be safe at work, and to have sometimes the bravery to say, "Hey, I'm not comfortable with this. We can do this better." And so I appreciate our union for organizing this. This is it's not just about municipal employees, so it's about workers in the community. And so if you have a minute on Sunday, it's worth going out and paying your respects. Thank you.
Thank you for that. I often forget to look ahead with my remarks here and do a backcasting, but thank you for that. I will be there on Sunday. That is an important event. If there's no further updates, we'll go back to Councillor Greenlaw, and I just want to acknowledge that there was she did provide a trigger warning, and her update was going to be around Sexual Assault Awareness Month. So if encourage folks to drop off the coverage if they're going to be triggered by what's to come. But I'll turn it back to you, Councillor Greenlaw, to finish us off this section.
Yeah, thanks. So just a few things have come to light through the news over the past few days, and I just wanted to take a moment to use this, public forum to address some of them. I did some deep diving on the weekend that was not super great for emotional health. So as we all know, April is Sexual Assault Awareness Month. And as you also know, we've had this conversation several times with Time's Up and Me Too, and now we're having it again as CNN has exposed what they're calling an online rape academy. And for those who are unaware, just for you to be safe, this is an online forum where men advise each other on which drugs and what doses to use to put generally it seems their partners, to put in their drinks so that they will be deeply unconscious so they can rape them. And men are engaging in photographing and videotaping these assaults, and then also inviting other men to partake in the assaults. And sadly, a lot of women are not surprised by the fact that this resource exists, but what is truly disheartening is that the site had over 60 million visits in February alone, which is more than 2 million visits per day. Another thing that came out is that a recent publication in the Journal of Interpersonal Violence coming out of the University of New Brunswick by 2 tenured professors is a piece titled Isolate, Inebriate, Intimidate, Repeat. High rates of sexual force against women are reported when young men given anonymous surveys. So this anonymous survey surveyed almost 3,000 Canadian and American men between the ages of 18 and 34 and found, quote, overall 95.1% reported having recently used at least one of the strategies to get a woman to have sex who they knew did not want to have sex and had not consented. Most of these occasions, 65%, resulted in successfully forcing a woman into sex, end quote. And the reason why I'm bringing this up in this public forum is that sexual assault is so often depicted as a women's issue. And herein lies the problem. Women and trans folk as well have been trained their whole lives to cover up, stay quiet, carry keys in your pocket, in your hand, rove in packs, carry mace, take self-defense classes. And we've done all we can do to avoid this behavior. And frankly, it's up to the men now. And I know it's not all men, but it's very likely somebody you know. And it doesn't start with assault. It starts with sexist jokes. It starts with boys saying, you run like a girl. It starts when you start using our gender as a term of belittling. And when you think of it, so many insults for men are effectively comparing them to women. And for anyone who's finding themselves reading terms like red pill or trad wife or toxic femininity, let this be a flag that you're likely in an echo chamber, and bear in mind that these echo chambers are large and they're targeting men and especially young men. And when I check feminist sites, if you want to talk about toxic femininity, we're talking about protecting children, uplifting each other, accountability for predators and predaceous systems, returning to earth, harmony. You toss in a couple crystals and some tarot readings, and that's pretty much what toxic femininity entails. When I look at the manosphere, I hear things like subjugation, dictatorship, the hypersexualization and objectification of women, incel, they're simply not comparable. And the rage is mounting in women for sure, because there's not much more we can take, and we keep raising this alarm. But we're living in a world where it's estimated that between 75 and 90% of all violent crimes are committed by men, with about 80% of rapes and sexual assaults going unreported, which means that's a vast underestimate of how many violent crimes are committed by men. And we're living in a world where men decide to bomb a school full of little girls to kick off illegal wars, largely with the intention of strengthening the North American fossil fuel market. And so all this is to say, this is a plea to all men out there who are listening to this, all men in this room. We need you to be more than just a guy who doesn't sexually assault women. We need you to be the guys who say, that's not okay. When your buddies are making inappropriate jokes, when people are making sexist comments, we need you to not be silent. When we are pushed out of the rooms and sometimes labeled as being hysterical for having very reasonable reactions to what's happening in the world today. And I also just wanted to take this moment to send some love and respect to heroine women like Giselle Piluco and Christina Blasey Ford, who've lived through some truly dark moments and are like beacons of hope for the rest of us. So I'm sorry to put that on your Tuesday night, but I just think it's really important that, you know, men take this opportunity as a sobering time to look at how they can be better allies. Thanks.
Thank you so much for your words and for bringing this important subject to the table and shining a light on one of its more heinous chapters that have come to light over the last days and weeks. With that, we'll move on with our agenda here. We do not have any a motion to close this evening. We don't have any council staff and camera announcements, so we're looking for a motion to terminate. Yeah, Councillor French moves termination, seconded by Councillor Hamilton. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you for your work today, Council, and the staff that are remaining in the in the room. Yeah, onwards and upwards. See you next week.